Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another live edition of the Spirit of Prophecy podcast. I am so fired up about today's program. This is going to be a first in many ways. We are going to have the most guests I've ever had on at one time tonight. We have an all-star panel for you, and this tonight is a post-trib, non-dispensational safe space. And in this program, I step out of my echo chamber more than anyone. I talk to all kinds, and I've been challenged a lot lately to the point it's just giving me a headache, and I need therapy. I need a safe space. And so I have invited a bunch of people on who I would consider more on my team when it comes to what we promote on this program. And so I am looking forward to talking with people that I mainly agree with. And so, you Satan's little seasoned people that are been hanging around and watching, this isn't going to be for you tonight. We'll boot you from the chat. If you start stirring up any trouble, let us have our safe space. I gave you your opportunity, and this is my therapy session after that. So please give some respect in that area, and I would appreciate that greatly. But we have several pastors with us tonight, and I'm going to have them all introducing themselves. It looks like we might have lost. I know we had more than that here. It looks like we lost some, but we're going to have more that are going to join us throughout the night. And so we'll just kind of kick this thing off, just kind of introducing everyone. So we'll just start in order. We've got Pastor Salvador Alvarez from Pure Words Baptist Church. So if you want to just start off, tell everybody a little bit about your church. If you have anything special going on. I know, Pastor Salvador, you've got a new building, which is really cool. So that I know that's exciting. But go ahead and give everybody a little bit of update.
Hey, so this is Pastor Salvador Alvarez, Pure Words Baptist Church. And like you said, we did get a new building. We're in 1001 Fairmont Parkway in Pasadena, Texas, on the southeast side of Houston now. And yeah, they're just serving the Lord, winning souls, and preaching the word.
Amen. All right. And Pastor Obi, it's good to have Pastor Obi on the program. So far, everybody that we have on here right now, they've been on the program somewhere before. I'm hoping to maybe have a few new people tonight. I actually sent out an invite to over 20 post-trib pastors. Yes, there's that many of us out there. I didn't realize there was that many until I started just sending out the invites. There were a bunch, and I'm hoping to have some new ones on the program pretty soon. I've got one scheduled. He told me he's not going to be able to make it tonight. He had to work too late, and we've got more. They're going to be joining us later. And also, if you are a post-trib pastor, and I sent out emails, not everyone responded. If you feel like you missed your link or something, send me a text. This was all kind of last minute, so I didn't have time to contact everyone, but yeah, send me a text or whatever, and I'll get you the link, and we would love if you could join us. But yeah, Pastor Obi, tell everybody about your church and anything new since last time we talked.
All right, Pastor Obi Afuego, Pastor of Love Assembly Baptist Church, Montgomeryville, Pennsylvania, about 30 minutes north from Philadelphia if you're driving, so not too far from Philly. We have our 6th-year anniversary coming up in the last weekend of April, and that Saturday before the 27th, that's the 26th, we're having a soul winning and fellowshipping, and we're going to watch the new documentary that just came out. Or I don't know if it's fully out yet, but I just got a click to it, or a video of it. So we're going to watch that. So if you're around the area, please come join us. Go soul winning, come back, fellowship, and watch the documentary. And that is A City Lost.
Awesome. Yeah, we're excited. One of the there was some people from another church not real far from us that came out to the viewing of A City Lost, and they're doing one in their church in the end of this month. And so they invited me to come over to that and wanted me to answer some questions and stuff. So I'm really excited about that. That's going to be a lot of fun, but cool. Yeah. Make sure you visit Pastor Obi if you're anywhere around Philadelphia. And then Pastor Matt First, another program regular. How are you doing this evening?
Doing great. Doing great. Custer, South Dakota, Mountain View Baptist Church. Pastor McMurtry, you were here a couple months ago, and we're still getting snow. It's spring, but I shoveled snow today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we had a great time out there, and the weather wasn't that bad when we were there. We had snow, but it was comfortable temperature, and it was just so beautiful out there. And good night. Yeah, that definitely want to get back out there and do some hiking one of these days. But that was a lot of fun. And Pastor First is the author of Who is Israel and Which One is Right? We've done programs about both of those books, and you definitely need to get your hands on one of those books if you have not read them yet. They will help you a lot. Those books are helping, definitely been helping a lot of people, so that's a great thing. And then it's from all the way in the land down under, Pastor Paul Stevenson. How are you doing? It's good to see you again. What's going on in your world?
Pastor Tommy, good to be back with you. I just want to say this though, before I get into it, while we're waiting to come on, I didn't know that you had Michael Bublé singing your introductory song. That sounded real. At least it's not Bethel Music or Hillsong, right?
Yeah. Well, it's it was supposed to be like 1940s big band era is kind of
Very
like
catchy.
the genre that I picked.
I'm wondering if that's why we lost the other pastor.
Yeah, I hope not. I hope I didn't offend him with the music, but it's all right. Well, I always cut out the intro, so we'll sanctify it later. But yeah, we had Pastor Charlie Haddad. I don't know if he had to step away. Hopefully, he'll get back on here, and I really hope I didn't offend him.
He's from New South Wales, and they're very different down there. Don't worry about that. We're from Queensland, so Queensland's the major state here in Australia. Okay, so if he's gone, well, he's gone. Don't worry about
that. Are they like those high church Bob Jones type of church people?
Oh, yes, very much so.
Or he just might have heard the music and just had to start dancing, and just kind of lost himself.
I pastor here in Queensland. I do pastor Open Door Bible Church. We are an independent, fundamental Bible believing, Bible preaching church, and we've been going 3 years now, and praising the Lord for what's taken place. We actually had Brother Charlie preach for us in January this year. Did a great job, phenomenal job. Blessed the people, good messages, and the last few weeks we put a new guy head over our soul winning. Brother Rob doing a fantastic job teaching the folks there at church about soul winning, and we've had about 7 or 8 folks saved in the last month here, which has been a real blessing. So very excited about what God is doing here in Queensland. Praise the Lord.
Wonderful. All right. And Pastor Matthews, what is going on in Jacksonville, Florida?
Well, I'm Pastor Theo Matthews, and we are in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm the pastor of Abiding Word Baptist Church. Things are going well down at our church. What's coming up this year is we are joining up with Pastor David Berzins in Stronghold Baptist Church for a soul-winning marathon, and that's Memorial Day weekend. It's May 24th. And we will be in Savannah, Georgia. And so that's what we're really excited about that. A lot of people have showed interest that they want to attend that. And so, we're looking forward to that coming up later on this year. So
awesome. Yeah, that's exciting. Pastor Berzins, hopefully he'll be joining us later on. So for everybody watching this, I wanted to do a 5,000 subscriber special. I do appreciate everyone who has subscribed to this channel and helped promote it, and I appreciate all of these men who have been on here, that they help keep the program interesting. And just so everybody knows, okay, I have a lot of friends out there who don't agree with me on as many things. I still love all of you, and I enjoy conversations with you. Those are very enjoyable, but at the same time, tonight is more about I kind of focus more on the ones that I agree more with, and that we're kind of promoting and pushing the same things. And if we disagree a little more on some areas, you are not my enemy, and don't feel bad about that. You keep preaching what you believe, and we'll keep trying to convince you you're wrong. But anyway, so tonight I just wanted to again, celebrate that, but also just kind of talk about the post-trib world and I guess just the impact that it's having. It is encouraging to see so many other people out there that are preaching the same thing. Do you all feel like that the door is opening for alternative positions on eschatology in the IFB world, or are they getting more stubborn than ever? I guess, what are your thoughts? What have you guys observed? So let's start with you, Pastor, first, because you've been fighting this for quite a while. You've got the books, and I know, you and I, we've talked privately too about several people who've reached out to you privately, pastors, missionaries. Some people are in a very difficult position too politically, where they can get themselves in a lot of trouble. But what are your thoughts on the impact this is having?
I think the pastors who have already made a big, bold statement for pre-trib are not going to show any sign of bending or cracking. But I think behind the scenes, there's a lot of interest, a lot of people that are quietly looking into it. I've gotten phone calls from pastors I don't even know, but they are searching. One pastor last fall who took over a church that had been pastored by his father-in-law, and the pastor before his father-in-law were very strong pro-Israel, Zionist, and pre-trib. But he's saying to me on the phone, I don't see it in the Bible, and someone gave me your book, and that's why I'm calling you, and I'm just asking you what I should do. So that's just one example of pastors that I know of, and missionaries probably as well. But if I was a missionary, I certainly wouldn't say a whole lot. But pastors that are quietly digging into this, and it's starting to become more mainstream, even on podcasts. Even people like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, who aren't even independent Baptist Christians, are starting to raise awareness to a lot of what's going on. And then the political scene, what's going on in our world, in our America. I think it's just raising questions, and people are starting. So I think it's good. But the guys that have already made a big, bold statement for pre-trib and Israel, they'll be the last to finally cave, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How about for you, Pastor Stevenson? You've been in this thing for a while. How many years have you been pastoring? And I guess, what do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with Pastor Matt. I think the guys here in Australia who are very pro-trib and pro-Israel are not really going to change their mind. Our major college here in Australia, Sydney Bible Baptist College, is very much that way, and I think it's going to turn out guys that are going to be pre-trib and pro-Israel. It's funny because I watched a guy the other day here in Queensland, and he's now parading around the Israel flag, and all of that. And I've not seen that before in Australia, where one of our churches is actually flying in the auditorium the Israeli flag. But I think a lot of maybe younger guys that are questioning, maybe wanting to reach out, but then again, they probably are not going to say anything, because over here it's a lot smaller than what it is in America. We don't have as many independent Baptist churches here than what you guys do, so we got a real small fish pond. So they're probably not going to say anything as far as their position on that. So yeah, I think the major guys are going to stay the way that they are. We get invited to conferences, and things like that, but we're just not allowed. We're not invited to preach, and we're always sort of eyed a little bit differently. There's that guy doesn't believe in a pre-trib or whatever. But I do think one of the major things here, maybe it's also in America, is the pro-Israel stance. Here in Australia, it's becoming really big, to the point where I think it's going to come. This is just my opinion. I really do think that for those of us that are going to keep preaching the King James Bible, the Bible's either going to be outlawed or will be jailed because of what the scriptures say about Israel. If you're going to preach that Israel according to the flesh are not the children of God, but those of us in the spirit, we're the children of God. Here in Australia, we've got laws being passed that's going to be classed as anti-Semite. So it's going to be interesting days here. But yeah, I think the major guys are going to stay pre-trib, pro-Israel.
Okay, yeah. Well, I do think that, and one of the things I've noticed in my world, yeah, the old guys are never going to change, but their followers, they're very quiet about it, and it's because they're not convincing. They're not winning anybody over, and people, they get a lot of people, mainly fundamental Baptists, they get very triggered at me and how I handle opposition. And I think it's because they're used to IFB, where we just kind of defame and we just rail and do everything we can to discredit anyone who disagrees with us. And I've just learned that's not effective. It certainly didn't help me when I was on the fence and I heard the Sam Gibson people out there just completely misrepresenting the post-trib position. It just made me think they were liars. And it even though I wanted to stay pre-trib, just them using that type of method, it just pushed me away from them. And these old timers, that's what they're doing. Most of them refuse to address the actual arguments. And so, it's kind of a mess. And if anybody saw my promo I released today too, did you guys get a chance to see my promo for today? Now, I did that just to inspire all the sermons about woe unto you when all men speak well of you. And then I'm going to take the clips from that. But then I've got 6 other promos where everybody's trashing me. So, but I found one place where they were saying positive things. And so I had to finally do a positive promo, but either way. So Pastor Alvarez, what do you think about this subject? Are we getting anywhere on this, or?
I think people are open to different ideas. Definitely. I mean, with seeing all the people that are going towards the Satan's little season, it's kind of like they're open to different ideas at least. But I don't know if it's a plethora of people going over to the post-trib pre-wrath side. But they're definitely doubting as to whether or not what they've heard their whole lives is actually true.
Right. Well, and it is a fact that many people are leaving dispensational theology, but unfortunately they're not all. A lot of them are going into a lot of more reform doctrine. They're going into amillennialism, postmillennialism, and things like that. But yeah, your thoughts on that, Pastor Obi?
From my experience, speaking to the pastors, they are pretty firm on pre-trib. They don't want to move. But just speaking to their congregation, because we fellowship sometimes, and they just enjoy how I'm strong in what I'm saying, how I believe the Bible, and how it's so clear to me and easily explained. So I don't, go and talk to their members against the pastor. I would rather talk to the pastor. But I see that because I listen to some of their sermons and they just breeze through those things. They don't take time to explain pre-trib. They just say it as if they're quoting the Bible, but they're not. So in my area, though, the main fight is keeping people in KJV. Let's start with that. Because I have some pastors I fellowship with, KJV is preferred. It's not KJV only. They say they preach with KJV, but they don't strictly KJV in their Bible. No, in their church, no, just preaching with KJV. So I tried. That's the one battle I'm fighting. And the ones that are KJV only are closer to Ruckmanites. So that's completely way off. So they're all pre-trib in their own way, in different. I don't have a clique per se. I don't have I didn't come from a Bible college that they know of. So I can't really tell in the IFB world. I'm still new in it, as you know.
Yeah.
So I can't really tell for now, but I think pre-trib from my experience.
Yeah. One of the things that I just noticed recently, and I think this is another reason that the IFB is kind of losing a lot of people, but we're not necessarily the ones winning them over to our side. A lot of them are going more reformed, amillennial, postmillennial. But I'd listened to, somebody sent me several videos from a conference They had to buy them because they don't put their stuff online. But it was the Hope of Israel conference, and I wanted to sneak into this conference so bad. And it's like, but all the preaching at it was total camp meeting style preaching, and all the sermons I heard, they were just typical camp meeting sermons. There was nothing doctrinal. There was no teaching. They were not addressing what people like us are saying. They were not doing anything to prove their doctrine. What they would do, they would preach a typical fire everybody up, camp meeting style sermon. And then they would throw in a line somewhere about standing with Israel. Like, we got to stand strong. Hey, man, we got to keep on keeping on. We got to stay on the firing line. And by the way, we need to make sure we stand with Israel. Amen. And then everybody goes nuts. And that would be the extent of it. I mean, this whole conference was supposed to be about Israel, and it was just a fire you up camp meeting thing. And I realized in their preaching, I just watched a bunch of sermons from a camp meeting that just happened last week. And I love camp meetings. Okay. And some of the sermons were good. I'm not trying to pick on them, but all the preaching that I heard was what I would call illustrative preaching, where they would take a story from the Bible and use it as an illustration to talk about whatever they want to talk about. We got to be like Shamgar, amen. We got to watch over that pea patch, and we ain't giving the enemy nothing, amen. We're going to fight till we're weary and our hand cleaves to the sword, amen. And I'm all for that kind of preaching. And, but the problem, if that's all you do, nobody's going to learn anything. And, and I'm realizing that's what these conferences are. And me and Pastor First, we're waiting for a conference that's supposed to be coming up that's like talking about, they're going to be defending prophecy. And I'm telling you, Pastor First, I think that's all we're going to hear at it. I don't think it's going to be doctrinal. I don't think there's going to be any teaching.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be fire you up, illustrative preaching. And, so just don't move, amen. But they won't tell them why. They won't prove where they're right. But Pastor Matthews, what do you see down there in Florida? Florida is known for all the Florida men and the crazy people. Are you running? Do you get around to many other churches? I know there's some camp meeting style stuff down there, but I don't know if you ever get any of that stuff.
There are. I haven't really been involved in any groups or of pastors that are pre-trib or dispensational. I hear different things. People who come visit my church, they'll tell me about their church or churches they visited. But I will say this: there was one guy I talked to, and it actually makes me agree with Pastor First, because he told me he basically disagreed with my position on Israel, and he kind of came from like a Zionist background. But what he told me, he said, I've been saved for 30 years, and it's a pre-trib rapture. And he just went on and on about Israel. And I was like, oh, so because you've been saved for 30 years, that means that you know what the Bible says. And I don't know. I think that people that have been ingrained and they've never studied their Bible, they've just grown up in church, IFB for 30 years, never even read the book of Revelation. I think if someone told them that it's a pre-trib rapture, it's there in Revelation 4, they're just like, okay, good, that's it. And I don't think they'll change. I really don't. So that's an older Christian. What I do think, though, about the younger Christians now, especially now in the United States, with all of the political, the current event stuff, all these different documents and historical discoveries coming out about Israel, I think people are kind of questioning the handhold or the grasp that Israel has on the world. They're kind of looking at it from a different light now. I mean, it's unfortunate that that's how it had to come about, that has been all this deception when it comes to news and current events regarding Israel. But I think there are more people now that are kind of asking the question, like, wait a minute, Israel is behind a lot of this, wicked stuff. I don't know. I don't know about Zionism. So hopefully a lot more people will, come to, believe in the Bible. The Bible teaches it's a post-trib, a rapture. There's no dispensationalism in the Bible at all, except for the 4 places that the word is used. And so, yeah, I agree with Pastor First. The people who've been in it for 30 years, I don't think they're going to budge. So,
yeah. Well, Pastor First mentioned Tucker Carlson. He's had some interesting interviews. I just watched the one this morning. I forgot the name of the guy that he had there, but he's had like 3 different people on there that I've watched where these people are not independent fundamental Baptists. They're not King James only people, but they start creaming dispensationalism. They start creaming Schofield, John Nelson Darby, all the stuff that we've been nailing for a long time. But it's like, why is it we can't hear this from independent, more from the independent fundamental Baptist crowd? And, why does it have to all come from like Reform guys and Calvinists and things like that? It's disappointing to me that our crowd seems to be the last ones getting the memo on these things. But it is, these big names, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, a lot of these people are pushing people away from that.
Yeah. There's others that are starting to come out too. In fact, I was invited onto a podcast, a guy named Jay Slay, or his podcast is Jay Slay USA. He's a former baseball player in the Phillies organization, I think it was. And he's a Christian. He's not one of us as far as independent Baptists, but there's more and more that are starting to figure this out. And I just feel like the independent Baptists are so locked in, and then they have these echo chambers like the Hope of Israel conference where they just tell each other what they want to hear instead of, truth's not afraid of examination, so they should be willing to listen to all sides. And that's what I appreciate about Pastor McMurtry's, events like this, or just different things where you bring on people that we know you aren't what they are. You don't agree with, you even play Michael Bublé music or whatever. But anyway, but you just, let people hear the other side and then figure out what is right. I mean, I think the best thing to do would be to teach creation alongside evolution. I think it would be pretty obvious which is right and which is wrong. But when you just hear one side, you don't understand the other side. You don't understand the issue. You don't see it. And what's happening with the independent Baptist crowd is they're having conferences, but they're just inviting each other and they're just patting each other in the back. And like one of the other pastors already said, I think it was our brother from Australia, you're invited to the conference, but you're not allowed to speak. Mm-hmm. And that's the way it is for us. If I go back to my alma mater, I'll be allowed to sit in the pew, but I won't be allowed to do anything else. And it's just because they're locked into what they want, and they don't want to relearn anything or have to go back and reteach systematic theology in a different way.
Right. Yeah. And again, I have the different people on because one, I want to actually address the actual arguments. And I think it's important that people on our side, when if there is somebody out there speaking opposition, I think it's good for them to see someone on their side actually have a real conversation, especially if they're capable of holding their own. I know in the past, before I had any kind of platform and anybody even knew who I was always wishing some of the big names that I looked up to and respected would address certain things. In fact, I even wrote a letter one time to a well-known speaker because I had never heard him preach on end times, on Israel. I even looked at I'd look at his book table. He sold a bunch of his sermons, and I even specifically asked him times like, "Hey, do you have anything on prophecy?" And he didn't have anything. And I thought maybe he was like on the fence or a closet. Well, he did eventually write a book on prophecy, and he defended pre-trib, which, hey, that's fine. I will say he accurately represented our side in the book, which I appreciated. I still disagreed with his conclusions, but I wanted to see him, stand up to the post-tribbers. That was kind of what I was hoping. And, he did eventually, but by the time he did, I was gone. So
yeah. So, yeah, I'm a graduate of a Bible college. Why? I mean, I'm in their opinion, I guess I'm a wayward graduate. So why not bring me in and straighten me out? You know, why not invite me to a conference or a private meeting where we can get this taken care of so that they can straighten out one of their own? Or why not just have a debate and bring in, you know, some of us and some of them and just sit down and discuss it back and forth. Why call it whatever they call it, but not really address it? And that's it. Just seems like an echo chamber. Like they're just it's a pep rally to reinforce what they already want to hear. It's you know, it's let evolutionists pass the, you know, the missing link. The other guy's got it, but we know it's true. And the same thing with pre-tribbers. Well, we know it's true because Dr. So-and-so said, the Schofield Bible said, this said, that said, and yet truth is not afraid of examination. And I think it was Mark Twain that said, most people don't want the truth. They just want constant reassurance that what they believe is the truth. And I think that's just a human nature thing. But honestly, I mean, if you could prove to me that I've wasted the last 10 years of my life or more, please do it so I can move on to better things. But I don't think I have, and I don't think this is wrong. I think we're starting to see more and more people realizing that the Bible's the final authority, not the alma mater, not the books, not the theologians, but just the Word of God. And the King James has to be the final authority for English-speaking people. And you can't prove pre-trib from a King James Bible.
Right. Yeah. Oops, I got the wrong one there. Yeah, Benjamin, he was right. I was talking about Dennis Coral. I don't usually like to mention names of old IFB guys, especially ones that I like, because then all the weirdos that follow me try to find stuff wrong with them, and I don't want them to get unnecessary attention. But I'll fight if you go after Dennis Coral, even though he wrote a book defending pre-trib, because I've always liked him. But it's good to have Pastor Jason Robinson on the program with us. How are you doing, Pastor Robinson?
Good. How's it going? You like my background? I figured I'd look smarter if I had
you look like a Calvinist now. Or Pastor First and Pastor Stevenson. They've got the books behind them too.
They got the real ones.
So what's new in West Virginia?
Oh, not much. Just having fun out here.
That's good. Well, I appreciate you joining us tonight, and had Pastor Robinson on a while back talking about the book of Hebrews, and you've got a debate coming up on Standing for Truth, don't you? I think I saw.
Yeah, the beginning of May.
With Pastor Foskey, right?
Yes, on predestination. So, reformed view compared to, you know, what I like to call the right view.
Right. Yes. Yeah, Pastor Foskey, I feel really bad because I really like him, but he's a Calvinist, and it's like, but he's a nice guy though. He's got a good attitude. I like his theme song. He's not like most Calvinists. He's nice. And it's true, because it's like most of them, they're just very condescending and have bad attitudes. And so he's, it's usually easy for me to dislike Calvinists, but I have a hard time with him. But I will definitely be watching that debate for sure. So that'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, one of the things I wanted to bring up and ask you guys about too, because, and I don't know if this is just because of what I do with the podcast, but, coming from a, pre-tribulational world like I did, the only challenge, or I guess that I ever saw in there, was between the pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib. That was it. There was never any kind of challenge on amillennialism, post-millennialism, any of those things. Now we've got a lot, just a lot of the different theologies that are coming out on end times. But are you guys, I feel like as many people are figuring out that dispensationalism is wrong, a lot of people are running into some of these other things, preterism and all that kind of stuff. And obviously I think some of those things are worse, but at the same time, I know for myself, originally, I was not as prepared to respond to those things because I was just not real familiar with them. The pre-tribbers, I know all their acts. the amillennialists, post-millennials. I'm not that familiar with all theirs, but are you guys running into more people that are of other eschatologies, besides pre-trib, that are challenging for you?
Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, Revelation 20 keeps me from being anything other than premillennial. I can understand some of the arguments, but Revelation 20 just keeps me premillennial. And I did run into the definition of historic premillennial, or historic premillennial, and I really liked it. It was almost 100% what I would have said. But I think part of the reason why people are going into like amillennial or preterist and all that is the writings that are out there. They're trying to find something, and so they're finding writings of amillennialists or preterists or whatever. And maybe that's what's causing them to slide that way. I don't know. But again, we have to let the Bible be our anchor. And there's some things that Philip Morrow wrote that I really like, but he wasn't premillennial for whatever reason. I don't know. But Philip Morrow was a lawyer just like Schofield, and he was in the fundamentals just like Schofield was in the fundamentals in the 2-volume set. Philip Morrow was a very respected Christian. And back then, 100 and some years ago, eschatology wasn't such a separation issue. I don't really have a huge problem with some of these guys that aren't premillennial. I just don't agree with it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you said there with looking back at the writings, there's a lot of that with people orthodoxy. If you lost me, orthodoxy when it comes to like whether it's Catholic Church or Greek Orthodox, and it has to do with I think it's this desire to want history to back up what you're saying, or that kind of appeal to authority or appeal to history. Not that our view is not historical at all. It's just the fact that I do think that there is that tendency to go back to that instead of just looking at the scriptures and seeing what it says. And so I see that with other things too, other than eschatology, even when it comes to doctrine, when it comes to eternal security, or we deal with Calvinism, that's something that it seems like that's the push is like, well, what church fathers stated what you said exactly, and going back into historical documents. So,
well, what it seems like to me, it seems like people that are doing that are just trying to out old paths or out old time religion, the old paths, old time religion crowd. Because one of the things that I'm hearing for sure from my crowd is that, we got to stand for old time religion and the old paths, and they will appeal back one generation. They will not go back before 1900. And so the thing is, the theology that, especially the eschatology that to me was mainly cemented in people's minds from the 70s generation, that's not old at all. But so what's happening is my generation is like, okay, we have it burned in our brain, old is better, so they're just going older. And they're reading all these reform guys that had some stuff right. But and even in areas too where I think they were wrong, some of those reform guys too, though, they were also very articulate. They were very descriptive on things, where the previous generation, the generation that trained most of us, they were very vague on a lot of things, and they didn't write very much. And a lot of the things they did promote was incoherent, just illustrative type stuff. And it was things like Enoch went out before he got taken out before the flood. Amen. That's illustration. That's illustration. Yeah. That doesn't prove the point, but that's the kind of preaching that they would do. And then they would also preach as it was in the days of Noah. As Noah got out, Noah got in the ark. He went above the water, meaning like representing heaven, above the tribulation, above the earth, because we're going to be up there, amen. And then they came back down. That was the kind of stuff that I heard. That doesn't prove anything. That doesn't make sense. So yeah, it's frustrating though, seeing him go into some of these other things that I just really don't like. And yeah, Revelation 20, I've never heard a coherent explanation of that supports amillennialism or postmillennialism or anything like that. And when they do a pretty good job of making sense of some Isaiah and Jeremiah prophecies and things like that, but those are already pretty cryptic. Where when you get into Revelation 20, that's just really specific, and they don't have a good work around that.
I don't know how the meek can inherit the earth without Revelation 20.
Right. And I don't know how the 12 apostles who died, many of them were martyred, how they are going to sit on 12 thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel.
Well, that's chapter 21, and that could be the new heaven, new earth, in my opinion. But the meek inheriting the earth, finally, inheriting the earth, the present world. Revelation 20, if you could, if one of them could explain it to me biblically and satisfy me, I could understand it and maybe go along with it. But until then, I just have to be premillennial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and again, so when it comes to so much of this stuff too, it is pretty funny. One thing I wanted to do, I want to try something here, and I want your all's input on it. Oh man, I think I accidentally clicked it off. I'm gonna have to try to get it back on there while somebody else is talking. But I was going to. Have you guys ever been on RaptureReady.com?
Maybe.
Okay. So it's a website. It's been around for a long time. I accidentally lost it. I got to get it back up here. But it's pretty funny. They have a thing on there where there's always a let me get it up here on the screen. So there's always like news events. Yeah. So Rapture Ready, most recent update, Rapture Ready news. Cause even though the Bible teaches imminency, prophecy is constantly being fulfilled. Nearing midnight. So I was wanting to see what the Rapture Ready news is. So this was on April 1st. So apparently these are signs that, the rapture is about to happen. So I was wanting to see if any of the current events are leading us to believe that the rapture is about to happen. So we have U.S. reacts to Le Pen's election ban and fraud verdict. The American government reacts to the French far-right politician Marine Le Pen being stopped by the court from running in the presidential election of 2027. What on earth could this see? All these. Oh, here we go. Here's one for Netanyahu. So Netanyahu set to cancel new Shin Bet chief pick as U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham calls it beyond problematic. Surprising reactions as most opposition leaders expressed cautious acceptance of the Sharvit, while the nominee drew flack from Netanyahu's allies. There has never been a better supporter for the state of Israel than President Trump. The statements made by Eli Sharvit about President Trump and his policies will create unnecessary stress at a critical time. My advice to my Israeli friends is change course or do better vetting, he added. So I do not understand why literally anything that comes on the news, they've got to make it like some kind of, rapture news or something like that. But what do you, is there anything that you guys ever see on the news? I know the pre-tribbers have scared us away from getting excited about anything, but you guys, is there anything that you ever see on the news that gets you excited and thinking maybe we're getting close to wrapping this thing up? Anybody have anything?
So for me, so every time I hear about like an earthquake somewhere or some volcano or something all around the world, or there's been some explosion or bombing that just all of a sudden happened, it just reminds me of, oh yeah, things are going to get worse, but I don't know if I don't ever really think, oh, the rapture is it's going to happen anytime soon, because obviously there's events that have to take place and prior to that, but you read about wars and rumors of wars and pestilences and all these things, those things are included, but they've been going on for decades. I don't know. Whenever something pops up like that, it's like, oh, that's interesting. volcano over here. Oh, there is a 7.2 earthquake over here. Okay, but I'm not drawn to now the rapture is going to happen.
Right. But you know what? You said the magic word that I'm always telling people is whenever we see the wars, rumors, wars, earthquakes, yes, reminders. You said I'm reminded, and I think that's appropriate. I think where we mess up and we cross a line that kind of shoots ourselves in the foot is when we say these things are, and that's how a lot of people make things seem all the times. Like, folks, this has got to be it. If this isn't it, I mean, then we're writing books about 88 reasons. That guy referred to that on Tucker Carlson too. The 88, that Edgar Wise, he will be forever remembered as that guy. And he made pre-trib theology look so bad. He made making 1948 significant look so bad. I'm actually very thankful for that individual. And I got excited when I heard him get brought up on Tucker Carlson. But yeah, these things are reminders because we were told these things were going to increase and things like that. But it could still be a whole lot worse, before it's actually a sign of the tribulation or something like that.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead,
I would agree. I preached a message on Sunday based on that, the earthquake in Thailand. And I said to the folks, this reminds us that, whole of creation groans. And so it reminds us that, as the days draw closer, earthquakes are going to become more and more. It's not an evident that the rapture's tomorrow, but it reminds us. And I tell you what, I think for me is I think once we start seeing Christians in Australia or even America starting to be martyred for their faith, like we see maybe around the world, then that might be a little bit more of an indicator. Okay, maybe it's not too far away. But at the moment, most of us in Australia and America, we can still preach the gospel freely. We go soul winning freely. Really, we're not being martyred. We're not really even being hassled a whole lot. You know what I mean? And I keep reminding my folks, it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. So just buckle up, So yeah, reminder's a great word.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you guys this, something you just said there too, because, I agree. I think it's going to get worse, but, a lot now, this guy that Tucker Carlson just had on, he sounded like he was more of like a post-millennial persuasion.
I think he's reformed something.
Yeah.
I've watched a few of his videos. I was just shocked to see him on Tucker today. But yeah.
Now, something that crowd always says about our crowd that I think is partially true is that we kind of have a pessimistic theology. Okay. Now, again, I think we have some Bible to back up that pessimism a little bit. However, where I think we are wrong is just because, the Bible says things are going to wax worse and worse. I don't think that's an excuse for us to just throw up our hands and just like give up on our country and things like that, because things have been worse before in our world and in certain places, and things have gotten better. And so, I'm glad in 1776, they weren't like, well, this is probably just the end times anyway, so let's just, bow the knee to King George. I'm glad they didn't do that. And so I don't think we should do that. But yes. So what do you guys would be some of your go-to scriptures, I guess, to back up more of a pessimistic, for lack of a better term, theology that shows things getting worse and, before Jesus Christ returns?
Well, my quote unquote pessimism would only be to point out that things are getting worse. But at the same time, Romans chapter 5 says we glory in tribulation. And we should realize that in the book of Acts, the more the persecution came, the more the word of God spread and multiplied. And because all of a sudden you've got Tucker Carlson and people like that are asking questions, as things start to get a little bit weird and crazy. And Israel is supposed to be God's timepiece from 1948, blah, blah, blah. Well, that generation's just about past. So the whole fig tree thing, and all that's about to close. John Phillips said, in my generation, I think our generation is the generation. Well, he's gone. And so pretty soon, even the ardent pre-tribbers are going to die off. And the younger crowd is going to start asking more questions. And I think it's a great time where we can help people to see truth for salvation, but also for doctrine. and to glory in the fact that tribulation focuses people better. We've just been too comfortable in our freedom of religion, and we're not really focused on Christ. We're running around doing other things with our freedom. And so I think persecution is going to be a good thing. And I'm not saying I want to wake up tomorrow in persecution, but I'm just saying I welcome it with the understanding that we're to be soldiers, and hopefully you raised your children to be Christian soldiers and not just on a cruise ship. And like the brother from Australia said, Brother Stevenson, there are laws here in America too about anti-Semitism that states have passed. South Dakota has it now, that you can't get a government contract unless you sign off that you are pro-Israel, basically. And pretty soon the King James Bible will be outlawed. They tried to pass that last year. And even the more conservative congressmen like Thomas Massey and others, I think Gates also said this makes the Bible anti-Semitic wording because it included, that if the Jews killed Jesus, that's anti-Semitic. Well, 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 14 and 15 says that the Jews killed Christ, killed the Lord Jesus and their own prophets. And so pretty soon we're going to come to the place where the Bible is anti-Semitic, unless, of course, you've got the modern version.
Right. Well, let me put it this way, too. To me, like the pessimism, I guess, is in relation to just the state of the world as a whole. But one of the things there's two things that we know are God's will. One, he wants to save people, but we also know, too, he is going to judge this world because of its wickedness. So the thing is, it does seem likely, and it seems like what we're seeing in the Bible is while the world is getting physically worse and like prepared for judgment, which we know is God's will, that also I think there's evidence in prophecy too that there is going to be a revival of souls during that time, which is also God's will to save a lot of people. So to me, if there is this revival of souls that's taking place, then we're seeing a very positive impact as far as God is concerned, which kind of shows where the post-millennials might be getting some of their thinking. They're seeing some of that positive aspect that I would say is more exclusively on just the spiritual side, involving just souls being saved and things like that. But then on the physical side, things are getting worse, because God's preparing this world for judgment. So again, I think we should have a pessimistic outlook towards this world. It is, since Enoch, God has been prophesying he is going to come and judge this world. And I just don't think it would make sense that he's going to do it when this world is at its best. Things are gone.
One of the most favorite hymns in our church is "This world is not my home. I'm just passing through." And that should be we should realize, even if I finally pay off my mortgage, I still got to pay rent to the government, or I don't get to keep my land. This world's just not. It's just not as fun a place to be as when I read about heaven and the new world. So, I think COVID was a blessing in a lot of ways. We saw people coming to church, getting out of dead churches and coming to a Bible-believing church as a result of COVID, and they're still members today. And it's really cool to see some of the positives in all of that.
The way I look at it is, I prepare for the worst, but I hope for the best.
Sure.
When it comes to, I think of like Josiah, and I think of the fact that Judah was going to get judged, and it was inevitable that Judah was going to get judged and they were going to go into captivity. But there was this kind of revival with Josiah and the Word of God. And so I don't take the pessimistic view of, basically, I know everything's going to get worse and worse. Seducers are going to wax worse and worse, it says in 2 Timothy. Obviously, the love of many is going to wax cold and iniquity is going to abound for sure. But I do think that there's kind of like this ebbs and flow of spirituality throughout history, even in the New Testament church. So, you think about just how bad it was in the Dark Ages, but then how it kind of rose above from that. And so obviously we're getting closer to the end, but I don't want to just put my hands up and be like, well, nuts to our country, nuts to our freedoms, nuts to all this. I'd rather just preach that, hey, let's be the Josiahs of the day, and then maybe the Jehoiakins will come in later, and then it'll all fall apart. But but not being naive either, to know that obviously, maybe we're in that day where we're the ones that are doing the great exploits, when that all comes down. So
yeah,
one of the things that I find, and Pastor Tommy, I've got to get going in a minute, but one of the things I find is that so many Christians are looking for reform government. I mean, you listen to a lot of American Christians and their hope is in Donald Trump. Not saying you guys are, but Donald Trump's the great hope for American Christianity. Look, he's bringing back religious freedoms or whatever. And it's the same here in Australia. So many Christians are looking for their hope in government. Oh, we need a different government that's going to be better for us as Christians. And I'm sure I sound pessimistic all the time, but I remind people, I say, you look at all through the Bible, God's people under different governments, whether it was Nebuchadnezzar, whether it was Pharaoh, Rome, or whatever, they all suffered persecution and had liberties taken away from them. But they preached the gospel, the power of God was on display, and souls were getting saved. And I try to draw our folks' attention back to, hey, this ought to spur us on to getting the gospel out there a whole lot quicker and not worry about reform government. Governments are going to make decisions, that we don't like and don't agree. I don't agree with abortion. I don't agree with any of that. We ought to pray for our governments and things like that. But I'm not looking for hope in a government. As a matter of fact, the worse the government gets, the brighter the hope. You know what I mean? It's like I said, it's getting worse and getting worse. That's a good thing. For me, it's a good thing. I love when I came to the understanding of the post-trib pre-wrath, it was revelatory for me. And it made the Bible a whole lot more exciting. It made preaching a whole lot more exciting because you actually, hey, folks, listen, we're here for such a time as this. This is when it's going to take place. It's happen. Let's get the gospel out there. Let's get excited. Let's warn people. And, for years we were all taught, oh, we're going to get away scot-free. We're going to get out of here before any problems, before any trials or tribulation. And there's going to be a lot of Christians that are just not going to expect what's going to take place. And I find great motivation in trying to help believers say, look, yeah, some are going to be martyred, but hey, what's the difference between some brethren around the world, like those 80 folks that had their heads chopped off not too long ago? You know what I mean? It's like, but in Australia or America, it's like, oh, no, we don't want to go through anything like that. But, it's going to come. It's going to come. So It's exciting, the post-trib pre-wrath position, seeing how governments are going, realignments, whether you want to call it the EU or whatever, all this stuff that's going on. It's a reminder, one world religion, one world government, the Antichrist, so on and so forth. I think that's exciting to me.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's a scary reality, when you see what you believe is going to happen actually start to happen. It is pretty scary, but here's a good question. Appreciate somebody donated here, and they asked a good question I want to ask you guys about. It says, do you fellows believe it's possible that 1948 was the beginning of the fulfillment of Ezekiel 22? In other words, this gathering of the house of Israel means their destruction. Jerusalem equals harlot. And Pastor Dad, thank you for coming. It was always good talking to him. But yeah, so obviously we make fun of the 1948 excitement that people have about that all the time, but at the same time too, I think we would all probably agree it does have some prophetic significance, just I guess in more of a negative way. So is anybody prepared to speak on Ezekiel 22 or have any things they'd like to say about that question?
Well, I mean, when I wrote the book, Who is Israel? Of course, I also included a chapter, Who is the Whore? Mm-hmm. And I do think the whore is Israel, the modern state of Israel, the Antichrist, unrepentant Israel that we see in the news. And I think she will get stronger and stronger, and that she fits more than anyone else in the description in Revelation. I don't know so much about Ezekiel 22 as Ezekiel 16. Certainly, you read Ezekiel 16, and it's obvious that Israel is a harlot. And so, yeah, I mean, and then chapter 23, Samaria and Jerusalem, Aholah and Aholabah. Aholah played the harlot. And so, yeah, I think whoever's asking that question, yeah, certainly 1948 has significance, but not the way the pre-tribber teaches it, as far as, Israel is God's timepiece. I think Israel is Satan's phenomenon, and God, of course, is allowing it because of prophecy. But Israel did not come back to the land in belief. And I don't see anywhere in prophecy where she's supposed to come back in unbelief, but that's what they're teaching. And they're trying to say that, she's there in unbelief, but then Romans 11, one day after the rapture, God's just going to make all of them get saved, which is Calvinism and, and all that. And so, yeah, I do think that Israel today plays a part for sure in the end times, but not the way the pre-tribbers teach it.
Anybody else have anything on that? Is anybody like well versed in Ezekiel 22?
Well, I would.
Go ahead, Pastor Robinson.
I was just going to say, well, just to add into that, obviously, we believe that the Antichrist is going to, come into the temple and say that he's God. So there's obviously going to be a significance to Jerusalem and all of that. But it's more of Satan's plan. It's not that God is. I don't believe that God is ordaining the building of the temple, and or that he ordained that Israel is coming back as a nation and all of this. But it does kind of show us, a precursor to, the temple being built, and the fact that God wasn't. I don't believe God was in 1948 bringing in unbelieving Jews back into the nation. So same thing with the temple. The Antichrist is obviously going to use that to proclaim himself as being God. So yeah, there's definitely going to be end time significance to that, but to try to put God's stamp of approval on that is another thing. So
yeah, with Ezekiel, it is fascinating to read through that and just how hard they preached and prophesied against Israel during that time. I mean, just the way she's constantly referred to as Sodom over and over again. And, it's amazing the way people can look at those prophecies and see something like a positive fulfillment coming for them, because there's so much destruction. And I get there is the parts where you do see something positive, but it's very clear it's in the remnant, and it's like, Paul makes it pretty clear how that all works in Revelation 11. And so it's I often feel like one of the reasons so many people miss a lot of they don't understand a lot of the prophecies in this. And like when it comes to Ezekiel 22, I am not ready to do a full exposition on that. On Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, those are books I need to do a deep dive in one of these days. But I will say this, that the problem with the futurist, we read all of those passages thinking of our future, and we ignore what they were dealing with in that day. And especially too in Ezekiel, that this is being given during the captivity, and we kind of see a partial fulfillment in them returning to the land that takes place. And so most futurists have never even attempted to look into what's been fulfilled from Ezekiel or how it's fulfilled. And I think it's because of the order of the books, because you kind of see the fulfillment in Ezra and Nehemiah that you already read about, several books before. And then they go from reading those major minor prophets and right in the New Testament. And it's like a lot of that stuff has been fulfilled. But it doesn't mean there's not a future application. I definitely believe there is, but I think they miss a lot of stuff there. So
yeah, I think that gets into the problem with the preterists, is that they only take the near future application, and they don't think that there could be an ultimate fulfillment or a dual fulfillment. And then the futurists are basically just neglecting that there's any near future application to what's being said. And then everything has to be future, You know,
Right.
so
Yes.
I think there's stumbling blocks in both those camps, and we need to obviously discern, you know, what parts already been fulfilled, what hasn't been fulfilled, or maybe what has a multiple fulfillment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the thing is, one of the things that our side has, and there are people who say things like, "There's no such thing as dual fulfillments." It's like, okay, well, let me put it this way. There are, yeah, okay, finally, there's no such thing as dual fulfillments, but there are such a thing as you could say as like do-overs, because a lot of times, so for example, at Christ's first coming, there's a lot of examples of things that Jesus did that it might be fulfilled or spoken by the prophet. If you go back and read those prophecies, you will see other things contained in those prophecies that Jesus didn't fulfill. It was like Israel got some of it done and Jesus kind of either finished it, completed it. And so it's like, yeah, there's only one fulfillment of it, but sometimes there was like a partial, yeah, like either a partial fulfillment or like a failed attempt, you could say. And
Well, I think
so,
Elijah would be a good example of either a spiritual and physical fulfillment, right? Because you have Elijah being John the Baptist spiritually, like
yes,
the spirit and power of Elias, but then you have the fact that I believe Elijah
right.
can literally be here as one of the witnesses.
No, that's a perfect example, because when the disciples asked about the scribe saying Elias must first come, Jesus verified, yeah, that's the case. But then he pointed out the fact that they killed him. So therefore, that you can't disobey something unless there's something to obey. Israel disobeyed when they killed John the Baptist and when they rejected Jesus as the Messiah. So now that's going to cause something to take place. So that's where in the New Testament, like to me, Revelation, that's why that should be our main blueprint, not necessarily Daniel or the Old Testament prophecies, because a lot of things went unfulfilled at Christ's first coming because of all the rejection, because of the unbelief. And so, we're looking for these things to be fulfilled, in the future. And I think the Elijah prophecy did not find its fulfillment then, which is another reason too. We just happen to see him being mentioned in Revelation chapter 11, because that's got to be done. So now I'm not going to pretend I fully understand all the legal reasons behind that and why it is that way, but I do think we have a lot of precedent for that in the scriptures, and it's deep, it's complicated, it's confusing, but I do think it's something that our people on our side in the futurist world, and especially in the premillennial futurist world, we need to sort a lot of that stuff out so we can answer certain questions better that I think the preterists are confusing people with.
So, like Luke chapter 4, Jesus stands up and reads from Isaiah 61 in the synagogue, and to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord. And he closed the book and sat down and said, "This day is this scripture fulfilled in your ears." But he left off a day of vengeance because that hadn't happened yet. But yet he said, "This day this scripture is fulfilled." So he left off the part that wasn't fulfilled, but the rest he read. And then another one is John chapter 5 and verse 28, where it says, "Marvel not at this, for the hour is coming in the which all that are in the grave shall hear his voice and shall come forth, they that have done good unto the resurrection of life, semicolon, and they that have done evil unto the resurrection of damnation." Well, we know from Revelation 20, there's a 1,000-year pause after that semicolon, because the resurrection of the just, the blessed are part of that first resurrection, and the second, the resurrection of the damned isn't until the end of the millennium. So there again, a semicolon represents 1,000 years, in the middle of that verse 29, and people need to understand that, and that God isn't like us, and that he can see the entire scripture all in one sitting. He sees the whole world, the whole history of man in front of him, whereas we can't. And so it's harder for us to pause that, I guess, or separate that.
Yeah, some passages in the Old Testament are out of order as far as chronological order, as far as if you're talking about new heaven, new earth, and then you're talking about 1,000-year reign. And so, like you said, Pastor McMurtry, Revelation should be our blueprint, because if you're looking at the order of events and knowing what is going to be in the future, for sure, I think Revelation's where you need to be. I'm going to jump off here. Sorry, guys.
Okay. Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for joining us, and it's always good talking to you.
Yep. See you later.
Yeah, we're jumping off soon, but I wanted to add this. Speaking of not God looking at the whole scripture or the whole eternity, right there. I'm not too moved about what happens here and there. If there's a war, there's an earthquake, I'm looking for the sign of the Antichrist. I know the world is going to keep getting worse and worse. It has gotten worse, and the times of Josiah, as has been said here, and that's what I look forward to. Just with what is presented to us, how can you make life better? How can you work spiritually, grow, help, make an impact in your generation? So what moves me, though, is looking at nations, how they are reacting. Look at America now, moving towards nationalism, not negatively as it is, but kind of positively, standing for America, Americans for America. America should look after itself, withdrawing from the world. And the world naturally doesn't like America, the United States. And so if they are not collecting America's money and support, then they will even hate us the more. Now, how does that affect the end times? In my view, it's either that Babylon is shifting, because I believe America is Babylon. So if Babylon is shifting to be another empire or another state, then that's one. Or two, Babylon is separating itself to make all these nations go against Babylon. So America will have an ally in Israel. The Antichrist will set up himself in Israel. When he's done with America and he moves everything out and he doesn't need America anymore, he'll destroy America with all the other nations. So that's what's intriguing to me, just to see how Babylon shifts, who is Babylon, and to see where an Antichrist can rise from, As for the world getting worse, it will keep getting worse, but it has been worse than this. In fact, what I believe the Bible is talking about is a cesspool of sin, where it's like the days of Lot, right? Of Sodom, where all the guys, everyone, great and small, come out and they're all like evil people. So I think America could get a whole lot worse. The world could get a whole lot worse. In the 50s and the 40s, they thought the world was getting bad. And we are like, oh, wow, that's just perfect church member right there. But they thought the world was bad back then. So I'm telling you, in the next 50 years, they'll be looking back at this time and say, oh, wow, we could go so winning. There were many people well-dressed, well-spoken. And they'll still be thinking, oh, yeah, the world is going to be bad. So I'm not thinking the rapture is anytime soon. In fact, I don't even want to go through the Great Tribulation, to tell you the truth. I think it'll be exciting, but I'm not looking forward to it. Instead, I'm looking forward to God staying his hand and trying to keep the world from getting worse, starting with your Jerusalem, then your Judea, right? Mm-hmm. So that's just how I see it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, well, let me ask you guys this. Has this thought crossed anybody's mind as like Trump has talked about like taking over Greenland, Canada, all that? It's like, what if, we are, what if he does something like this? I don't know if he's going through or not. Everybody's saying he's just trolling us. But, I mean, doesn't it fit our theology that the world is going to be divided up into basically 10 kingdoms and 10 groups at some point? So if that's going to happen, you do need countries basically joining together like that under, a single, leadership. So I think we should actually expect to see stuff like that. And wouldn't that be a wild one for these, super Trump IFB people out there, if he's like setting everything up for the 10 kingdoms of the Antichrist? But what are your thoughts on that?
I think that will happen. Go ahead, Pastor Alvarez.
Thank you. I think there's definitely some signs as the things are kind of like the situation is getting ready for that to take place in the future, the end times events. Like another thing I'm thinking about is like Elon Musk's Starlink and his Neuralink, talks of Neuralink and stuff. Like Starlink having internet anywhere, so that the mark of the beast, with whatever chip they put in, can be used to buy and to sell. And yeah, like you were talking about, like the nations thing, like the geopolitical atmosphere needed for the end times to take place. There's like little hints and glimpses of us reaching that. It's kind of like in the Revelation 11, whenever they see that the whole world is watching as the two witnesses were killed. And you can totally see that nowadays with the internet and with everything that we have. So there are definitely things that are like making it seem as if the setting for everything is getting ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and if anybody on this planet is capable of making the mark of the beast happen, wouldn't it be Elon Musk? And can you imagine? And think about how much everybody loves that guy right now too, on our side. But yeah, you know, and I said obviously our theology is a little pessimistic. I don't like to be too pessimistic, and then just anytime something good is happening, they're just setting us up to deceive us. You know, I think we can still be happy if we're seeing something that appears good, even if they are fooling us with it. If it's a good thing, Trump's giving us tax cuts. He's just trying to get in good with this so he can, like, hey, no, tax cuts are good. Let's be thankful for it. But yeah, Pastor Matthews, do you have anything on that?
Yeah, I was going to say, with the President Trump saying, acquiring Canada and acquiring Greenland, I think he really wants to do it. I don't think that he's just trolling people. I think it's a part of, setting up this strong, nationalism, because when the earth is divided up into 10 different regions, those are going to be 10, I believe, sovereign regions, sovereign nations that give their power up, for their nation, and for this one guy, the Antichrist, to take over. And so I do believe it's like the groundwork. Whether Trump does it or not, I do think that it will be done. The earth is going to be divided up in these regions, and Canada and Greenland just kind of make sense, in my opinion, because when you think of North America, Canada and Greenland are kind of a part of North America, and so that would be one of the 10 regions, in my opinion. So yeah, I don't think it's a troll. I think it's that's what he's setting up, and yeah, the as far as the pessimism goes, you might think that, that's a really negative way to look at things, but I also think that we need some pessimism to kind of motivate us to do what's right. And I think as we get further along in time here, it's going to be a clear the difference between someone who's saved and someone who's not. Now we can't really tell all that much, but as we go further along, you're going to see there's going to be a clear line, because from all the martyrs that are going to come, I mean, yeah, that's negative, but there's going to be a lot of soul winning, a lot of people going out because they want to serve God. They want to be one of those lights in this dark world. And I think it's just going to be really clear. We need pessimism, in my opinion, to kind of push us, goad us to I don't know. Whenever you see something negative, you want to be there to, like, oh, I don't want to do that. Let me get in line. So I think we kind of need that pessimistic push.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, and I think Trump does this too, where, he acts like he's trolling, but it's kind of like that person who's they're like testing you, and maybe they say something a little inappropriate just to see how you're going to react. It's like their way of kind of grooming you a little bit. They're going to see how you respond. And so he says some pretty crazy things, watching how people will respond. And if a response is good, then he goes forward with it. Like, for example, too, his whole basically America taking over Gaza, which I think that's a terrible idea. And I will say this too, it actually surprised me but even a lot of the pro-Israel Baptists, that seemed to make them pretty nervous when he said that. And I don't think he got the reaction he wanted to from that. Doesn't mean he's going to move away from it. But I definitely, when I hear Trump say some of these things, I do. I think I think he's testing the waters. And I don't know. What do y'all think about America taking over Gaza?
Well, if I could answer your earlier question about Canada and Greenland, just 10 days ago, and I'm reading from Newsweek, headlights, Donald Trump suggests U.S. could join British Commonwealth. And we Americans can't fathom, because we had a revolution against Great Britain. But I agree with what the other pastor said, and what you said, that there's this 10 entities at the end. And I've always thought America is going to have to cease to exist being America as we know it in order for revelation to finally come to pass. And so as an American, I hate to see this. And as far as Gaza, that sounds terrible. But see, Jared Kushner said it a few years ago that Gaza would be great real estate. And so, but it was still shocking to hear Trump say it, especially with Netanyahu sitting right there. But I think they're big plans. I think there's some big shifting and global plans that are being made behind the scenes that fit with the end times prophecies, but certainly don't fit with my American patriotism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that I heard about that statement too about joining up with Britain or whatever, and it's like that is so offensive as an American. It's just like
that's why we shoot off fireworks, because we got independence, right?
I'm thinking about the famous Alex Jones when he was on Piers Morgan's like 1776 will commence again if you take our guns, and it's like if we try to do anything like that, I'm ready for another 1776. That's the last thing I want to do is join up with England. But
they'll probably sell it as an economic necessity, and money seems to be the driving force for everything. So as long as money's good or whatever, and especially if it's Trump doing it. If it was Biden doing it, we'd all be throwing a fit. But if Trump suggests that we need to take over Gaza, well, it must be a good thing, and that's how it's all going to get sold, I think, to the conservatives, is that, and the money, just it makes financial sense. And that's how it's, and Trump's a businessman. It's all about the dollars, right? And I think it's really all about dollars, and I think he means well. But I also think that he's very pragmatic, and whatever works, whatever. And that's why the technology is scary, because right now he's surrounded himself with Elon Musk and these other people like Peter Thiel and these other guys that I can't even say their names, but they are into this digital currency and into digital controlling of people. And that's just leading into the Antichrist and the mark of the beast and all that.
Yeah. Well, every president seems to make the government more powerful. Mm-hmm. Just Republicans make it more powerful in one aspect of the government, where in the when the Democrats, they make it more powerful in other aspects. And so overall, we always lose ground, and I feel like too, when Trump got in, we saw him declare there's just male and female, and it's like we got a little bit of ground back. But the thing is, they work in decades, not just years. And so we're still losing so much ground.
Yeah, you go from Joe Biden and an administration full of transvestites and sodomites. So then you get Trump back, and he declares male and female, and we're like, woo! But really, that's just a bone that's getting thrown toward us. I think the bigger picture is what's going on behind the scenes, and you see, for instance, Trump 3 weeks ago basically said that Massey should be primaried. Well, Thomas Massey's probably one of the best congressmen we have, and then just this past week he says that Lindsey Graham is a great senator. Well, Lindsey Graham's a sodomite, a rhino. He's a horrible warmonger, and so here he is, tearing down Massey and promoting Lindsey Graham, and then this other guy from Florida that he just talked about yesterday. And so a lot of times I think we conservatives, we pay attention to the State of the Union the icing on the cake, but we're not really paying attention to what's really going on behind the scenes and what's really happening. And so the agenda, whether it's Republican or Democrat, is still going forward.
Yeah. Now I saw something about Graham being a sodomite. That was a true thing.
I
Was that just recently found out?
No, I think that's a known fact that Lindsey Graham is a sodomite, and he certainly is not he's just, in my opinion, he's not a Republican. But anyway,
Yeah, I don't like him.
I think he's just a warmonger, and he's certainly not one of our good representatives or senators in Washington, D.C.
Okay. So one thing I was wanting to ask, and I meant to do this too when we had more people on the program, but I'll ask you guys this now. So when it comes to the Spirit of Prophecy podcast, what would you like to see more of on the show? What are some recommendations? I actually, and I don't want to say this publicly, I actually have a huge guest lined up that is going to be big. It's going to take us to another level. And the only hint I will give you is he does not agree with my theology. He's of a different persuasion, but it's a pretty big name. And but he agreed to come on the program, and so I'm really excited about that. And I'm very interested in his perspective too. You know, it's one of these things where I'm intrigued. I listened to another interview with him that was really interesting, where he said a lot of good stuff. You know, I would definitely agree with him on a lot of things, but yeah, it's I'm excited about that. But what are some recommendations? And again, that's why I try to be fair. I got somebody in the chat saying I was rude to brother Jason Jack. I was not rude, and I did not do a scoffing video after that. One thing on this program, if I have somebody on the program and, you know, if I don't think it's right for me to invite them on, even if I disagree, and then after I have them on, I go and do another program where I just proceed to malign them, mock them, and make fun of them. Then it's just like I'm just setting people up for me to just beat up on later. And to me, if they need to be beat up on, I'll beat up on them while I have them on the program. And so, but if I have somebody in the program and I disagree with them and then later give my perspective, that's not me beating up on them, scoffing them, and being rude. And so Jason Jack is in there, and he's verified I have not been rude. That was just me defending my point. So thank you very much for that, because I work very hard on following certain protocol. So, but what would you guys like to see on the Spirit of Prophecy podcast?
So I'd like to see Old Testament appearances of Christ. Ooh. I think that's an interesting topic and study. And I don't know, I think it's kind of interesting, you know, the times that when Jesus appears, and some of the times when some people might say it's debatable or questionable. One of the ones I think of is with Samson's parents, and the angel came and spoke to them, or the man came and spoke to them, and I don't know. I do think that is an Old Testament appearance of Jesus, but I'd like to see what other people think. I mean, there's several times in the Old Testament where I believe Christ showed up, and so I think that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a great subject. You are officially invited to do a podcast with me on that subject. We need to schedule that. That's a good subject. No, that is a very interesting. That's a very interesting thing. Are you guys on with Melchizedek? Who thinks it was Jesus?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said,
I'm almost persuaded. I think it could go either way. I'm not 100%.
I think there is a way you can make it not him, but it's kind of a stretch. And there's a few lines in Hebrews that I can't explain. That like where there's a few things it mentions, like, well, it could mean this, but then there's a couple things. So my official position is it's Jesus, but that is my. But at the same time, it's so interesting and it's such an intriguing topic. I like to talk about it and get other perspectives on it. But no, that's definitely good. And yeah, somebody asked to give a hint on the theology of the big name I have coming on. He's post millennial, so yeah, he is post millennial, and but yeah, the interview is not going to be until the end of May. So yeah, I had to schedule it way out. I've got some other guests. I've got another post Trib non-dispensational guy who I've never had on the program before. I was hoping he would be able to come on here tonight, but I've have an interview scheduled with him. I believe on April 12th is when I will be interviewing him for that. So the way it is now that I have the StreamYard program, I love it. And so on the pre-recorded podcast where I have guests, I'm going to make those live for members, but then a lot of times when I record, I have to edit and stuff, and then I'll re-release it later. So I don't know when it will be released, but I'm going to be recording with them on April 12th. I'm also trying to get it lined up too. I've got a USS Liberty survivor. I had him already scheduled, but he was having a bunch of technical difficulties. He's got to get another computer. But we are going to talk about the attack of the USS Liberty, which is a very interesting subject. And this man was there.
I'm a friend of one of the survivors.
It's probably the same one that I'm having on the program.
Does he live in Wyoming?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So hopefully we can make that happen soon, because I've been anxious to talk about that. And so I would prefer to do a program on it, with him first, just because, since he was actually there, because I have my thoughts on that subject. And it's one of those subjects that when you look at the facts, and I have listened to both sides on what they're saying, and the conclusion to me of what it appears to be is just, it's a truth that I don't want to believe.
As far as the Liberty?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a 4-hour, 4-disc documentary. I've got it right here called Sacrificing Liberty.
Mm-hmm.
They did a great job. And unfortunately, our government has been corrupt for a long time.
Yeah.
And LBJ was one of the worst presidents we ever had, for sure.
Yeah. It does. It looks like our government tried to sink it so they could blame the Egyptians and we can go to war with them. But it failed. And it's an awful story. It really is.
It's an awful story about how these men were treated afterwards.
Yeah.
It's just, but it just proves how realistic the false flag was. I mean, It really was. It was a setup job. At World War III would have probably started had that boat sank.
Yes, and it's one of those things too where it shows, just because I understand, Zionist Christians who dispensational Christians who are so enthralled with Israel that they believe we're going to get blessings from God if we support them, who believe that anything that moves forward with Israel is going to make it that much closer for us to get raptured out. I can kind of understand why they are the way they are, but to me, why does our government, so strongly stand with them in that way, to just the detriment of our own nation? It's just so horrific to think about. It's like, how bad do you have to be to sacrifice your own people like that, just for, I don't know. I don't understand what the gain is for our country.
No, it's not about our country. I mean, the deep state is deep, and the purse strings are the pockets are deep. There's just a lot of influence, but it ties in with, in my opinion, with the whore of Babylon. She becomes powerful. Unfortunately, I don't think it's make America great again. I think really in the end it'll be make Israel great again.
Yeah.
And as an American, I don't like to say that, but as a Christian, I still know how it ends, so it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Hey, so another idea, back to the question before, about video ideas. I think it'd be cool if you did like a Bible Q&A, whether either it be live chat, people asking questions about prophecy from the Bible and just like what does this verse mean, or have a like a ready list of questions that people have already wanted asked and answered.
Yeah. Well, it's I like doing stuff like that. I am not the greatest in the world on the spot answering questions, a lot of times I get lucky if it's something that I am very well prepared on, but like Ezekiel
Not
22.
Ezekiel. Yeah, Ezekiel.
Yeah, Ezekiel, come on. that was a tough one. But
Yeah.
it's one of those two though. I got to go back like off the top of my head. I can't give you the context of everything in there. I have to go back and read it. I'm sure after I went and read through it, I would have some strong opinions on it. But yeah.
There was one that someone had asked in the chat before, where it was asking about what does it mean when the Bible says that in the last days they shall look upon him whom they pierced. It's Revelation 1:7.
Yeah. Pastor First, I think you wrote about that in your book. Do you want to answer that one about? So yeah, they asked earlier about they shall look on him whom they pierced. I forgot what the specific question was though.
It was at 6:26 p.m.
Oh, okay. So I got to go way back.
Because I had like a specific interpretation for how that, whenever I'd read it, how to like explain it. But I wanted to get your thoughts on it to see what you pastors believe on it. Because whenever I read,
yeah, here we go. So yeah, it says, what does it mean when the Bible says that in the last days they shall look on him whom they pierced? I'm stuck on that verse. So, and then she has also on here, can you explain Revelation 1:7 to me, please? So, and Pastor First, I know we've talked about this one before, but in John, when Jesus gets pierced, it quotes that verse. Look on him whom they pierced. Now, is it quoting that because that was the fulfillment of it, or because that was the actual piercing taking place that was prophesied of? And so,
well, it's quoting Zechariah 12:10.
Right.
And again, John says, another scripture saith, they shall look on him whom they pierced. The previous verse, he quotes, a bone of him shall not be broken. So the crucifixion is fulfilling a bone of him shall not be broken. And then also Zechariah 12:10, they shall look on him whom they pierced. That doesn't mean that won't happen again, and that in Revelation 1, they also which pierced him will look on him. Because when he returns in judgment, those who are involved with his crucifixion will stand before him again. But John chapter 19 is clearly showing us that Zechariah 12:10 is being fulfilled at the cross, which Schofield says isn't the case. Schofield tries to make the Revelation 1 passage to be the fulfillment of Zechariah 12:10, and overlooking that John called the fulfillment at the crucifixion. And so there's a lot of people out there that say that Zechariah 12 is yet to come, and that it's still future. Whereas we talked about earlier about the dual meanings and dual fulfillments and things, I think Zechariah 12, Zechariah 13 are already past or present, and Zechariah 14 is the only thing that's still to come.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers the question.
What were your thoughts, Pastor Alvarez?
I just saw it when it said Revelation 1:7, where it says, every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him. I saw it as is during the tribulation, when after the tribulation, Jesus Christ comes, and then so the Antichrist has been beheading Christians, and kind of like when Saul said, why do you persecute me, when Saul was going after Christians, that when they're persecuting us, when they're beheading us and in that sense piercing us, that they're persecuting Christ in that sense. So it's like a spiritual, they're piercing him, and that's why it's like they're gonna see him whom they pierced. Obviously, since it's in the future, it's not the literal people who pierced him on the cross, unless they're resurrected to see him,
Right. At the judgment. But for me, John chapter 19, John is saying another scripture saith. So John is quoting from Zechariah 12. He's citing Zechariah 12. But in Revelation 1, it's also John. John is the writer. But he does not say that this is a fulfillment of Zechariah 12. He just says, behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him. So when he returns, for the believers, it's the Messiah, it's our day of Christ. But for the unbelievers, it's the day of the Lord, it's the wrath of God. And they which pierced him are finally going to, the Pharisees and the chief rulers and those that pierced him will now stand before him in judgment.
Right. Well,
that makes sense.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people do too in the dispensational world is they often read these prophecies and then they just kind of get an image in their head that I think was put there by prophecy books.
Yeah.
And
Schofield notes and
right, or Schofield's notes. And then whenever you come along and you, I guess, maybe interpret it in a way that's contrary to that, they can't get past it. So when it gets to verse 10, it says, and I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplications, and they shall look on me whom they pierced, and they shall mourn for him. So they read that and they just see like all of Israel being saved right there. But
right. They don't realize that back there when Jesus was being crucified, grace was being poured out then,
Literally.
They don't see it.
Yes. Yeah. And he was making supplication.
Absolutely.
He prayed, Father, forget. So it's like you can go and show them like, wait, Jesus is literally pouring out the spirit of grace and supplication. He's praying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They look on him when they pierced. And so then they see that too. And again, because they're trying to tie it to all Israel being saved in Romans 11, and therefore everybody in Israel has to be feeling this way. But there were some. I mean, you had a centurion that's like, truly this was the Son of God. How do you think he felt after that?
The thief on the cross had grace right there.
Yeah, the thief on the cross recognized it. And then too, you had Mary and the other women that were there mourning. You had John that was there mourning. I mean, so there was a great deal of sadness, but because they're looking for a verse to go along with like everybody in Israel getting saved, like they believe at that second coming, they're reading that into that verse right there. And it's like, no, we can see every aspect of that. And then here's the other mistake they make too. This is a whole nother subject here, but then they read in it, and in that day shall there be a great mourning in Jerusalem, as the mourning of Hadad Rimmon in the Valley of Megiddon. Valley of Megiddon. This proves this is at Armageddon, right? No, it doesn't. It's comparing the mourning that had taken place in the Valley of Megiddon, which took place after the death of Josiah, when he fell in a battle there, and they had a great mourning and lamentation for him. And it was just saying that, hey, this is going to be a very sad day, like the day that Josiah died, and a great mourning took place in the Valley of Megiddon. So again, because they're also looking for a way to connect this to the Battle of Armageddon, and even though the Battle of Armageddon, or the Battle of the Great Day of God Almighty, actually takes place in Jerusalem, and it's just another area where they're wrong. They're just, pre-tribbers are wrong on so many things. It's like, just for that one verse, you got to straighten them out on Armageddon. You got to straighten them out on so many different things before you can get them to come around. And so it's pretty frustrating.
I wrote in the appendix C, I wrote about the Zechariah 12 in John chapter 19. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where if you're futurist, everything's future. And and if they're preterists, everything's past, and they can't understand that some of it is both. And it's about rightly dividing, and Schofield's all about rightly dividing, but he was worse than most anybody as far as dividing. But yeah, it's a good question, but I don't think Revelation 1 is the fulfillment of Zechariah 12. I think John clearly tells us that John 19, the crucifixion, is the fulfillment of Zechariah 12.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and the thing is, in Revelation chapter 1, all the tribes are like wailing.
They're wailing, not just mourning. They're wailing.
Yeah. And it's
wailing,
it's not just Israel.
Right.
Everybody's wailing. We don't see grace and supplication being poured out at that time. So it's like, yeah, that's like, I'm sorry. Yeah, obviously we have some similar wording there, but I think too, it's just kind of this poetic justice too, because, you had them looking on whom they pierced the first time, mocking and scoffing and all that. And I mean, look at how Jesus was, the state of him at that point. But then, when he comes back, he's coming back victorious, and they're gonna be like, we are in big trouble right now. And so, they're definitely not the same prophecy. And it's funny because it's usually the pre-tribbers that are making, separating events, and then, where we're often making it one and the same. And then the one area where we make it one and the same, or we make it two, they make it one and the same, which is interesting the way that works.
Yeah, for me, Revelation 1:7 is negative for the unsaved.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
All the kindreds of the earth shall wail because of it.
Yeah. But anybody have any questions? So I'm gonna keep this going a little bit longer. Hopefully Pastor Berzins is able to come on. He was going to try to come on, but I don't know if he was going to be able to get on till about 8 o'clock. So we'll go to 8, and if I don't hear from Pastor Berzins, we'll probably shut it down. So if you have any other questions, we'll try to respond to those, or again, more suggestions for the program as well. Do you guys
have to drop? I need to drop.
You gotta drop out. All right. Well, I appreciate you joining us. Always good hearing from you. And tell everybody.
Yeah, I'm gonna head out. I'm gonna have to head out too.
Okay. All right. Well, Pastor Alvarez, thank you. And Pastor Matthews, tell everybody one more time about your soul winning marathon you have coming up.
Yes, it's in Savannah, Georgia. It's May 24th. That's Memorial Day weekend on that Saturday there. And anyone in the Savannah, Georgia area that's interested, please go to Stronghold Baptist.church to register for the event, so that we know who's going to be there and who's going to be participating. So
awesome. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for coming on. Always good to talk to you guys. But what was I getting ready to say? I forgot. I lost my train of thought.
Talking about Pastor Berzins coming on. If he isn't going to, I guess I could drop out too.
Well, you can hang on with me for a few more minutes. I'm going to go till 8. I'm going to give him till 8 o'clock. He told me he would probably be about 8. I haven't heard anything from him yet, but I was saying something before that. I lost my train of thought though. But so and you all can leave your thoughts in the comments too. But as far as like entertaining programs, are there any? I don't want to say it this way because I don't want to like approach these people this way, but I was going to say, are there any heretics you would like me to have on the program? Or I won't say heretics, people we would disagree with who might happen to be heretics, but we'll be nice and not necessarily call them that. I don't know if anybody has any suggestions on that. I am trying to get a public square discussion. I'm wanting to do one with a bunch of Ruckmanites. And I'm going to give them all a chance to explain why they're not heretics, even though they teach 3 gospels, even though they, just bring up a lot of the stuff that we accuse them of all the time, and just give them the floor. It was like, and see what they say. And I approached one guy, and he was supposed to give me some names of some but I hadn't heard anything back. So I don't know if nobody wants to do it. The other program I'm wanting to do sometime. I'm not going to get SoCal Preston. He has proven if people cannot behave themselves and conduct themselves appropriately, they don't get a chance. And SoCal Preston, I don't do dumpster fires, and he doesn't know how to behave himself.
Yeah, I agreed to a second debate with him, but it turned into just a crazy personal attack, and it wasn't like I was embarrassed for myself. I was just embarrassed for him. I felt like it was a waste of my time. And I did see Standing for Truth on there earlier, and I haven't been on since, and I don't know if he thinks I don't want to come on or what, but I don't mind going on Standing for Truth. I just wasn't real interested in Preston anymore.
Yeah. No, Preston, he can't behave himself at all. But John the Baptist said interview Jack Smack. I might do that sometime. You ever listen to Jack Smack, Pastor First?
No, I don't think so.
He's pretty entertaining. In fact, having the Ruckmanites on, but no, Jack Smack, he hates Calvinists. Oh man, he hates Calvinists so much.
Huh.
And he has a song called Calvinists Are Not Saved. He does these, like, he makes up songs against Calvinists all the time, and it's pretty funny. And you'll have to go listen to Jack Smack sometime. It's a guaranteed dumpster fire. And but it would be hilarious. I might invite Jack Smack on the program. But I wanted to get the Ruckmanites on here. The other thing I was wanting to do too, I wanted to get a group of Calvinists on here to convince us that they're brothers. and just do the same thing. Just hit them with all the stuff we accuse them of all the time. That Jesus didn't die for everybody, all that kind of stuff, and just see what they have to say. I think it would be as entertaining as all get out. But yeah. My wife doesn't think that you'll like Jack Smack. I think you need to go listen to Jack Smack, and at least go listen to a song, Calvinists Are Not Saved. And in fact, when I did a debate on Standing for Truth against Jeff Dollar to get myself fired up before the debate, I went and listened to his song, Calvinists Are Not Saved. And it was very, very entertaining. But all right, we got Pastor Burzens. So did you want to have a final say, Pastor, first before
do you want me to jump off?
If you want, or you can hang on.
I've never talked to Pastor Burzens.
Okay. All right. Pastor Burzens, how's it going?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
We're doing good. So appreciate you joining us. I've had a fun discussion so far. So we had Pastor Matthews on here. He was telling us about the Soul Winning Marathon you guys have coming up, and so that's exciting. But how are things going in Georgia and the church plant in South Carolina?
Really well. Everything's going really good. We're continuing to grow slowly and just reaching a lot of people. The church plant is doing great, and our home church is doing really well also. That I'm super excited about that Savannah Soul Winning event, because we get to team up with Pastor Matthews, and it's just going to be a good time. I'm excited about it too, because I'm not the best at getting information out to everybody and making videos and and kind of promoting events. So I think this is the most advanced notice I've been able to give for anything that we do. Normally we schedule events and I'm kind of running around crazy and trying to get everything organized, and making a video is kind of the last of my thoughts. But I'm hoping we already have about 22 people registered on our website, that includes families and whatever. So is these individual registrations, which is really nice. We know it's going to be a good turnout already, so I'm excited about that. But everything else is going well. I didn't get to hear any of the casting. I had a few other things I had to get taken care of, so I'm glad I got the time to make it out here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on.
I don't want to repeat anything, so I guess just however you want to, whichever way the discussion's going, I guess I'll just jump in.
Basically what this program was tonight, except I've been talking to a lot of people I disagree with, which I enjoy doing it, but I had too big of a streak of people I disagreed with, and I was just getting challenged too much, and it was wearing me down. And so I needed a therapy session and a safe space and an echo chamber for a night where I just talk to people that I agree with. And so we've just been talking about post-trib, premillennialism, and just Israel, the stuff that we agree on. But I guess the one thing we've been talking about a lot of things along those lines. But I guess one of the things I would like to ask you about that I asked the other guys about too is when it comes to my world that I'm from, the only eschatology challenge ever was between kind of the pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib. I had never really been challenged on amillennialism, post-millennialism, all that stuff. So maybe a lot of it's just me because of this podcast and the subject matter, but it does seem like many people are getting away from a dispensational pre-tribulational theology, but a lot are going into amillennialism, post-millennialism, and other things that are not in line with me. Are you seeing much of that? Are you running into other forms of eschatology and people that are confused in these things? Because I know for me, I've not been as prepared to address those things as I am like the pre-trib and dispensational doctrines.
Yeah, I would have to say what you said, the pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib is kind of the only discussion I'd ever been used to, even before I went to Faithful Word or anything, like just years past from the time I was saved. That was always a discussion. It was kind of like the at least any churches I've been around or any followings I was part of, it was already we're premillennial. There, that was all just standard stuff, and I didn't even really realize there was many people that believed otherwise until more recent years. But I'm not the best person to ask about what the culture's like around with other people, because I really don't have that many friends outside of our church, and I don't really know what's going on and what's being taught. And I know there's a lot of crazy things on the internet, and I think that's probably where a lot of things get traction nowadays, especially that doctrines that may have been around in the past and kind of fizzled out because they didn't really have a whole lot of merit, now all of a sudden can get a lot of traction because you have a lot of people who are tossed to and fro with every wind of doctrine. And man, finding wind of doctrine on the internet is pretty easy these days to come across. So, and especially that combined with many people not really getting plugged into a good church. I mean, you need to be going to church regularly to be grounded in doctrine and not just looking for bits and pieces here and there online, because that's the easiest to get swayed, is when you don't have a solid foundation, because every doctrine has some implication at, like, kind of into other doctrines, right? So when you're going to church regularly, you're getting a lot of different teachings and a lot of different parts of the Bible. It helps to guide you away from areas that I consider kind of crazy. I mean, there's everyone could have some disagreements, and I can understand where people are coming from in many different beliefs, but some are just kind of wild and out there that I don't really see a lot of merit in. I think a lot of those that may get a lot of traction online now, it's because of those reasons. It's because people just aren't grounded in a lot of the basics.
Yeah. Well, and I think another reason too, maybe people like us are finding some of these people as well, is because a lot of these, I guess there's a lot of other religions and forms of eschatology too that have Israel right. And that's one of the things that's been frustrating me. It's like, I've always had, great respect and still do for my independent fundamental Baptist brethren, not been a fan of Calvinists and things like that. But yet I'll hear Calvinists often get up and eloquently speak truths about Israel and, who we are in Christ, while I'm listening to the IFB guy who's non-Calvinist, just praising Israel, supporting Israel and everything. And so I get really frustrated listening to people who are not fundamental Baptists just laying out truth on Israel like you don't hear from Baptists unless they're like, the few from our persuasion. And so
Yeah, that's
It's frustrating.
attractive, right? When you could see when there's truth just being taught, but they're wrong on a lot of other areas, but they're screaming something that a lot of people see through, right? People are seeing much more through the Israel facade these days than probably now more than ever. But I don't know how long that's going to last either, because now there's this push to lump all of the people who are against Israel with like a liberal crowd of the Antifas and all that other type of like the really far left crowd is they're being painted as that, like anyone who's against Israel is going to fall into that camp instead of that's to try to keep people just thinking that there's only one or the other. It's only red or blue. It's only but I get what you're saying though from the main point of like people are getting mixed up probably in other things because they see some truths coming from people, but then that comes in a package that has a lot of other things that are screwed up.
Yeah.
Earlier we were saying that it's probably because most of what you can find written was not premillennial. They were more correct about Israel or about eschatology in general, but they weren't right about premillennial. And so because that's all they can find written or resources or online, like you said, they tend to swing that way. And the other thing is, I think it's just human nature to look for somebody to follow, to look for somebody to latch onto. And we're forgetting to latch on to just the Bible and let it be the final authority. And that's the spirit of Antichrist that we're in. It's kind of like, we want a human leader. We want someone to guide us.
Right.
Yeah, leadership's important, but obviously everyone needs to understand that as much, we need to, just like Paul said, hey, follow me as I follow Christ. So that's
right.
We can never put the person above the word, above the book, right?
So earlier I said Revelation 20 is the reason why I can't be anything else. I have to be premillennial. It's Revelation 20. The other verses, the other passages in Isaiah and other places aren't near as clear to me as Revelation 20. It's just, I don't know. If someone can show me Revelation 20 any other way than I see it, I might listen, but I can't see it any other way. It's got to be premillennial.
Yeah. Well, something too I was wanting to bring up, and I never mentioned it when the other pastors were on, but I do think one of the reasons we're losing people on the premillennial end is because it does seem like a majority of your teaching on premillennialism that's out there is so centered around Israel, and it's all about Israel. And so the thing is, I do think when it comes to the people on our side who are right about Israel and are still premillennial, I think we need to do a better job of explaining. And I'm talking to myself too. I've not done a lot on this subject at all, but I think we need to do a better job of explaining the purpose of the millennium, because in most of the premillennial world, it's all about Israel. It's all about Israel because God's got to do this for Israel, and so that's going to have some problems. And again, when it comes to a lot of these things too, and again, I don't hate amillennialists and postmillennialists. I just disagree with them. I don't hate them, but I disagree with them. But I feel like, and Calvinists, but that's another thing. But the problem is, it's the amillennialists, the postmillennialists, the Calvinists. They're out there just dropping truth bombs about Israel, and then people, that are more from the independent fundamental Baptist world, they're listening to that and they're learning these truths about Israel that we're also teaching, but they're hearing it from these people first. And the problem is now, like, well, these are the people that show me the truth about Israel. And then they buy into their truths or their teaching about salvation, millennium, and they end up taking the whole package. And I don't like seeing that. And so that's why, for me, I just, and another reason I want to do this program too, tonight, I wanted people to just see other people that are out there that are preaching, post-tribulational, premillennial, non-dispensational teaching out there. There are a lot of us, and I want all of us to get our teaching out there on these areas where we're right, so we can beat the postmillennialists and the Calvinists and the amillennialists to these people, in that world who are confused right now. So
let me ask you a question then. Do you see more people getting persuaded in a non-premillennial position? Like, is this?
I'm seeing a lot of it. Yes. Yeah.
Because I mean, to me, it's interesting to hear about that stuff. And I have sometimes my church members will bring up things because, like I said, I'm kind of out of touch in many ways. And sometimes they'll bring an example of this. I forgot who exactly I was talking with last year. And people were talking about like some white national racist stuff kind of creeping into churches. And I had no clue. I mean, we're here in Georgia, and if you've ever seen our church, the makeup of our church is like, I mean, it is so diverse, more than just about anywhere I've ever been. I mean, we literally just have every ethnicity pretty much represented in our church, and represented strongly, not just one or two here or there. I mean, it's like so. Hearing that to me is just kind of like, well, I thought we were way past that just in general as a culture, as a society. Like I've only mostly had experiences with people who don't see much race of an issue anyways, regardless of even what the Bible teaches on it. Like it just seems to be the culture has gone that far. And then I hear people saying that, no, it's actually a thing. And that's crept into churches and pastors having to deal with that issue. And as we were talking, there was someone that was sitting there listening that actually was, he had gotten right about it, but he had gotten sucked into that. So when I hear these things, I'm going like, man, what don't I know about sort of these subcurrents and these trends that are happening? Because sometimes I feel too isolated. So hearing this now about the millennial stuff, I'm thinking to myself going, I don't even know if I've preached an entire sermon on premillennialism. Just because to me, it's kind of like, I just thought it was for independent Baptist, relatively speaking, just IFB churches kind of, that was the standard,
Right.
So there's areas I know, and we all need to be careful of this, I'm sure. And, so when I hear about it, it's like, oh, I need to sharpen up and make sure I'm addressing these various doctrines. Cause you can never just assume that people know or believe a certain way. I mean, you really can't.
Yeah.
There's some unanswered questions for me. I mean, why is it necessary to have 1,000 years before eternity? I don't know, but I take it literally, and I just, God knows. Maybe it's because no human ever lived 1,000 years, and maybe God wanted to show all of us what his intention of a perfect world was supposed to look like, or the world that Adam and Eve had. I don't fully understand how there can be unsaved people in that millennial reign, but it says it, so I take it as face value. And I also think the Earth's about 6,000 years old, so I kind of look at that 7,000 year as the seventh day type of if we go another couple thousand years, then I'm going to change my premillennial position. Because of because in Hebrews it says, now in the end of the world he has sacrificed. So we're in the end. I mean, that was written 2,000 years ago.
Right.
So if we go another 2,000 years, now we're balanced out with the Old Testament, as far as timing. So I know we can't go, a couple thousand years. We just can't. And so I do wonder how much more time there is before that 1,000 years starts, but I don't know. But and we can all, when we get to heaven, say, boy, we sure blew it about that, or we sure misunderstood that. And I'm sure we're all going to slap our foreheads and say, why didn't I see that? But I think it's just important that we just take it literal. And I think it provides, for me, it provides how the meek can inherit the earth by having a 1,000-year reign with Christ.
Yeah. So because to me, I think what our side needs to do, because I think in us preaching the millennium right, and I've not fully laid all this stuff out where I'm ready to present it in a way that does it justice. But I think one of the best, to me, if somebody were to ask me what's the purpose of the millennium, well, I think what you have to look at first is what Jesus was looking for at his first coming. and in his triumphal entry, which was his coming, when he told his disciples, there's a verse that the preterists love to use where he talks about, you'll not go over all the cities till the Son of Man be come, and people apply that to the second coming. No, that was referring to his coming, his first coming, when he showed up on the day of visitation at the triumphal entry. But when he looked over the city, he wept over it. And when you go and you read every one of those verses that he quoted from the Old Testament, when he went in there, all of a sudden, if you go back and read those passages, you understand exactly what he was looking for. You'll understand what he did not find. And then if you look at what he was looking for and what he didn't find, then you understand why the kingdom was taken from Israel, given to another nation. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a minute. That's what we've been doing for the last 2,000 years. We're doing the job Israel failed to do. God wanted a people of all nations to be there at his coming, to be clean and to be sanctified, but they were not clean and sanctified through the things of the law. They failed in keeping the law. They were shutting people out of the kingdom. There were only Jews there, and they weren't even fit. So to me, when you look at what he was supposed to find in his first coming, that's what would have, that's what we're doing now. And so when he comes a second time, that's when all these things are going to be given out. And then we're going to, there's going to be certain things that I do believe need to be fulfilled. He's always been looking for a righteous nation. He's always been looking for that sanctified people. Right. And yes, we are all those things spiritually right now, but there's also certain judgment that he's wanted executed on earth as well, that we as a church have no authority to do. And so I believe all of that is going to take place in the millennium. And I think it's an area where we all need to work on getting all the scripture together on that, explaining what needs to be fulfilled, how it's going to be fulfilled. I think there's plenty of Bible on it, but it's going to take a lot of work because a lot of it's in those difficult passages in the Old Testament.
Yeah, and part of it too, I think, I know through my own study, is just trying to differentiate between the new heaven and new earth and the millennial kingdom. Right? There's some areas where you, especially in the Old Testament passages, because you're talking prophecies that sometimes they feel like they're a little jumbled together, and like in the same chapter, it's kind of referencing Jesus Christ's first coming and then the second coming, and and you got a lot of prophecy in there, but it's not always easy and clear to see how it all literally applies, right? So right. We read about the animals in that I think is talking about during the millennial reign, but then it's like, well, are there going to be animals in the new heaven and new earth? And a lot of questions like that. And we may never know, the answer exactly. Some of those are harder to see. But right. I wanted to make a point too. I agreed with Pastor First on the, when you talk about the meaning, of the millennial reign and stuff, and of course we have to believe what the Bible says literally, because it's the word of God. So we're gonna take it for what it says. And the fact that there could be unsaved people, that's something that I've pondered as well. And my only the only thing that I could see that just makes sense is similar to, well, when Jesus was on this earth and performing miracles and proving he was the Son of God and showing he was the Son of God and preaching everything, there were still a bunch of people that could see all of those things and still reject him. And that's the only way I could reconcile saying, hey, how could it be that he's going to be ruling and reigning and there's going to be all this great peace and, and a great kingdom on earth? How could there still be unsaved people? And I just think it's people just choose to not want to accept for their own reasons, their own sinful reasons, I guess.
Well, think about what a testimony it will be to, after Jesus has ruled and reigned for 1,000 years in righteousness, the fact that people will still reject him too. It's kind of a testimony for all who has ever gone to hell, that, it wasn't because of Jesus, because look at all that he did to keep people out of hell. It was their choice, without a doubt. And I think that, that will be, there's many things we see in the Bible that are a testament and a testimony to the righteousness of Christ. And then I think there's certain things that's a testimony to just the wickedness of man. And I think that'll be another example of that. And so, yeah, it is. And, when it comes to the millennium, I don't think we ought to be too freaked out that certain things aren't really that clear, because here's what is clear, what we should be doing now.
Right.
When the millennium comes, Jesus here, he's going to sort out all the details.
Right.
So if we're looking at references to those things and we don't completely get everything, I don't think that's really a problem at all for us. As long as we're just, but the problem is, though, we are curious, we've speculated, and I think people have tried to force other places in the Bible to fit a speculation that probably wasn't right. And so then we've ended up creating more confusion. And so I think there's plenty with that we're never going to fully figure out. So, for example, too, a lot of people, and some are in the chat, talking about the little season doctrine. Well, here's the thing. In the premillennial world, none of us have ever thought too much about Satan's little season there, because we're like, well, that's 1,000 years away.
What are they talking about? This little season? What are they talking about?
They believe Jesus came in 70 AD. There was a literal rapture, unlike the preterists. There was a literal resurrection, and there was a literal 1,000-year reign. But now we are in this time of deception, where Satan has been loosed from the pit, and he is deceiving the nations. And basically, we're being prepped for the battle of Gog and Magog. So I did a discussion with Jason Jack the other day, and there's a lot of people, that are going that direction. It's a lot of big hurdles that I'm not capable of jumping at this point. Honestly, I would love it if it was true. Then I don't have to, then there's no tribulation coming. I don't think, anyway. I don't know if we're going to get on the bad end of Gog and Magog or anything like that. But there's a lot to that doctrine. But that Satan's little season, though, that is not something we really talk about much, because why would we? It's kind of like new heaven and new earth. We're all content and we're all okay with the fact that we don't know a lot of the details of that, because it's so far out there, and so, but that's not an excuse for somebody to take something about the new heaven and new earth and then just run with it and go crazy. It's like, no, let's back up. Let's get ultra focused on what we're doing right now. I think it's okay to, I think God left us some mystery for a reason.
I'd never heard of that Satan's little season until I saw it pop up on your podcast.
Me neither.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've been, again, I guess with what I do with this podcast, I run into more of that. And I've had 2 people send me the book. I did a review of a book on it afterwards. There's no author. They didn't put their name on it, but I had somebody from England send me the book, and as well. And it immediately became my most viewed podcast, immediately. And
so are these people amillennial or post-millennial?
No, so they would be, like I said, they would have a timeline. Right? Yeah, they believe in a literal millennium. They just believe it already happened.
Oh, yeah.
So that's
so they're post-millennial.
No, because again, post-millennial, that implies that we usher in the coming of Christ. Oh. They believe the coming of Christ happened. And so that basically Jesus and the glorified saints, they left.
And now we're just
some believe he left. I don't know if they believe he left earth and went to heaven. Some believe he went to the camp of the saints, which some believe is the North Pole, which is in the center of the flat earth. That's what a lot of them believe. I think there is a variety of opinions on that. And then
so I have a question, if I can ask. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Mm-hmm. But once we finally prove, or once they finally prove that the earth is flat, how will that better my life? How will I be? How will
tell
I?
you what,
Well,
if
how will I be better?
If they prove it to me, I'm going to pursue the camp of the saints, and I'm going to go find Jesus at New Jerusalem.
I mean, I really don't care if the earth is round or flat. I really don't. But
I don't either.
I'm just wondering why it's so important to argue.
I don't know. I hope it's flat, but I have
been
been called a Jesuit 700 times at least in the last 2 weeks just because of my globe back there. I've got a Jesuit in between two pillars. Coffee mugs. I didn't know that's a Jesuit thing I did there, but it's just like, come on, people. And listen, I was nice, I was fair, but again, it's
Careful with your hands. You might make a symbol.
yeah. I got to watch it. But I talked with Brother Jason about this, and this is what they've got to come to grips with, because like on this program, we are honest to a fault, and I am the first to admit where there are areas where we are weak, maybe not real convincing, things are not conclusive, and I get people mad at me on our side when I'm like, yeah, that's not necessarily proof, that's speculation. I tend to agree with that, but we've got to recognize that's not necessarily hard evidence. And I do think that, they need to admit that, hey, you can't really get mad at people for not being ready to just throw out all of history, all of secular history, all of church history, because, they will admit that, it's a teaching that has not been accepted by churches. It is a newer thing. That doesn't mean it's wrong. I'm just being honest about the argument here, and that is a huge leap. And so, Brother Jason is patient. The other people are not, and I've been rebuked a lot in the last couple of weeks. And you know what? I challenge them to go find another IFB guy, another premillennial guy out there who will show patience even half of what I have. And I got that IFB culture. It is in my nature when I hear something I don't like to want to lash out, foam at the mouth, all that kind of stuff. And I don't do it. And I'm getting treated like I have. And it's just like, I'm sorry. I'm not convinced. I would love to be convinced. I would love if they proved to me that the earth was flat.
Yeah. Again, I just, until I can understand why it's important, I don't want to waste time on it. Mm-hmm. If I could understand why it's so important, then I might decide to dig into it. What part of Revelation do these people think is still to come? Like the mark of the beast, the Antichrist, what part is any of it? Is any of Revelation still future for the little season people, or is it just the phrase "little season" is the only thing that's still
right? No. Again, yeah. In theirs, we're at that point where Satan's been loose for a little season. So
okay,
they do.
So the mark of the beast has already happened.
Yeah, that's all.
The
that was all
already happened.
First century. Yep. Yeah. So, yeah. Again.
I mean, yeah.
Well, what do they think about the coming of the Son of Man in the clouds? And
no, they believe it happened.
That happened.
Yeah.
Everybody saw it. The sun and moon were darkened.
Yeah.
And
yeah. No, they have a timeline that's probably just like ours. Yeah.
Just shifted
but
back.
Yeah, it's just that. And listen,
because anytime I read about the day of the Lord, I mean, that's a pretty significant event. I mean, that's a huge event, and one that I stand by saying that doesn't happen multiple times. Like you could have multiple fulfillments of prophecy, kind of dual prophecies and even triple prophecies. But to me, that's one. I mean, how many times is the sun and moon going to be darkened and the stars are going to fall from heaven? That
already happened.
That is a singular event. So
yeah.
And
their eschatology it already happened.
And when though, like, do they have any evidence that record like history that says
right? No, because the storyline is that, and we know the Catholic
Well,
Church has erased a lot of history and stuff.
Are they saying that like it's all a cover up?
Yeah. So,
hidden.
and listen, they've got some fascinating. There's some fascinating theories out there that it's like, okay, that's interesting. So, for example, all right, many of them believe that the little season started in 1776. Well, have you ever seen a side-by-side picture of a painting of Lucifer from, I forgot when it is, like the early 1800s,
And the Statue of Liberty? Yeah, I just saw that on recently.
Yeah, both of them broken chains. All right, both of them have broken chains on there, symbolic of Satan being loose from his pit. You know, he's carrying. You know, Lucifer is known as like the light bringer. You got the Statue of Liberty and Lucifer with the torch, and it's like, you know, that's kind of interesting. You know, it's got the crown with, I think it's 7 horns on it, stuff like that. So it's like, they have been, you know, you look at I mean, look at our nation and all the Masonic influence that's there with all the buildings.
Well, there's an Adam,
Washington, D.C.
There's an Adam Weishaupt that 1776 means something too. There's the Illuminati 1776 stuff.
Yeah, I think that's when it started.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't doubt Satan is busy doing stuff, you know, but God certainly used America's coming and freedom of religion to spread the missions and the gospel around the world. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, America was the closest thing to a Christian nation we've ever seen in human history.
Mm-hmm.
Not that everyone was Christian, but yeah, certainly Satan's behind the scenes doing his thing. He's always a copycat. So yeah, he's got his 1776, just like he's probably got his 2025 going on. So
right, but it's one of those things, you know. And if I may play devil's advocate a little bit here, since we're talking about this, but it's you know, it's one of those things where, to me, it's still going to be a little too big of a leap, because it's like, how do you cover up all history? And I've read a lot of course, you know, I can't read original languages and stuff like that. When you read some of the early church writings, when you read things like Irenaeus and stuff, I mean, Irenaeus would have to be all completely fake, because, and when you read Irenaeus, he sounds a lot like us when he talks about end times. I mean, there's little differences. He has different terminology, but when you read what Irenaeus believed, that there was going to be another temple built, and this is in 2nd century. He believed there's going to be another temple built. He was talking about Antichrist. All the things that we are talking about as future, Irenaeus was talking about as future in the 2nd century. So the thing is, that would have been in the millennium. He's writing all this stuff. So Irenaeus would have to be completely fake. You know, now again, and I mean, I guess some history could be fake. One thing he brought up too, that was interesting to me, because I'm like, what about all this Roman history that we know about, right? We got all this history about Church of Rome, or not Church of Rome, but Roman history. I didn't know this. He brought it up coincidentally, because I'm thinking about the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. Very famous. Well, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire was written by one guy, I believe in Jason Jackson in the chat. I should have him jump on. I think it was in 1776. He said was when that was written. And like everything that we cite about Roman history is pretty much from, Edward Gibbon in 1776. So it's just like, okay, all right. Yeah. So yeah, it's fascinating. I'll admit it, but it's still, it's a little too much for me to accept. And, you know, I think they should be understanding of that. I don't expect, you know, everybody to just jump on board with things, and see, people are thinking I believe it on the chat just because I accurately represent it. It doesn't mean I don't help myself. See, that's where I am. I am unique. Okay. I don't need to misrepresent in order to prove something. All right. And this is, you know what? This is my echo chamber tonight. These guys are giving me therapy, because I've had the Satan's Little Season people coming after me for the last couple of weeks. So
Well, here's my heart, and maybe I'm wrong fundamentally, my understanding, because literally this is like all I'm hearing about that doctrine or whatever. But if part of the premise is that it relies on having to accept that there has been a total control over history, like just whatever we've heard is just lies, then my worldview fundamentally is in opposition to that. Well, because I do know lies are being spread all the time, and I know that victors control the narrative, but you always have people who will bring truth, right? I like, as long as God's word is around and people love truth, you'll have people to, even if it's a minority, even if it's a small amount of people, I don't believe you could ever extinguish the truth from the world, like in a total sense. I mean, sure, we live narratives, we see narratives, and I don't know what everyone believes about 9/11, but I mean, we know what the official narrative is on that, but look how many people don't believe that, and look how many people don't believe other things. And sure, with the internet, we live in an age where information is spread a little bit more freely and more publicly, but even prior to that, there's still always been people who have been blowing whistles and saying, no, this is the truth. And to be able to, I don't see it as possible.
And think about it this way, because
it's too big of a conspiracy. There's too much that it's not plausible.
Right. And I get it.
Mandela effect or something like.
Right. Yeah. Satan being let out and deceived, that's obviously a big deal. But here's the thing. Before he was thrown in the pit, right? He was deceiving, but there was always a remnant. There was always some source of truth. And so the thing is, now he's out. I don't think he's back with more power than he ever had. I think he's back with, assuming they're right, it would be with the same power. There has always been a righteous remnant. So again, we should be able to find somebody. There should have been somebody out there teaching this stuff.
How could the Satan's little people believe that they're right if everything's been hidden and covered up? I guess is another question, right?
Well, my question, the right conclusion, kind of like the flat Earth. My flat Earth argument is, what does it do for me in the long run to finally agree with flat Earth? The same thing with this little season. How will it change my future if I don't agree with the little season theology at this point?
Right.
If Jesus is already reigning in this millennial reign and this little season is going on, what real, other than a slap in the forehead and I guess I didn't see that. What else does it change? How does it change anything?
Well, I asked him that too, because, Paul, he talked about Hymenaeus and Philetus, who concerning the truth have erred, saying the resurrection is past, and overthrow the faith of some. People's faith were overthrown, thinking the resurrection was past. And so I specifically asked him, isn't this doing the same thing now? If you're wrong, would this not be overthrowing the faith of some, which is, again, the faith, I believe, is in reference not to faith for salvation, but in our practice and how we live our lives and our belief system. And so I asked him, is there any, because as New Testament Christians, we think, and I think, to the best of our ability, we are following the instructions set forth by Jesus Christ and the apostles. And we are to be doing those things, as Paul often referred to, looking for his coming. So the thing is, if his coming already happened, is there anything that we don't even need to be doing anymore? Are we now able to change anything, since we're kind of in a completely different era than what we thought? Which he said no. That we should still be doing the same things that they were taught in the New Testament, and he believes right in salvation, and people are still getting saved the same way and all that kind of stuff.
So are these people, these little season people, are they still local church? Are they still practicing all 66 books of the Bible, or are they,
I don't know.
Local church? Are they local church? Do they believe the church age is done?
I mean, I don't know about Jason Jack, or he goes to church. The people that I have personally talked to, or the people that I know who believe this, are not in church. And so I don't know if that's the case with, a large percentage of them or what. But the thing is, if this is getting people out of church, that sounds like it's overthrowing the faith of some. Because again, the faith, it's not about just faith for salvation. It's how we live, how we practice, serving the Lord, being a part of a local church. So, I think that's one of those deals where it's like, you gotta be careful with stuff like that,
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like not only do you have to witness to people about what Christ did for them, but now you have to convince them that the earth is flat, and and that it just seems like you've got to jump another hurdle. I don't know.
Well, they said that the resurrection is past, though. Like that's what they believe.
Yes. So the first resurrection is past.
So do they believe then the glorified bodies, like 1 Corinthians 15 talks about, and then do they must believe that that's in the second resurrection? Is that
no? They went back to heaven with Christ.
And they're still in heaven now.
Yeah, they either went to heaven or they went to the North Pole.
I think it's a bit.
I would never be able to do what you do. I'm sorry. I would. There's no way.
So it's Rudolph and Santa.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the cover up, I guess.
So the local church thing is big. That's huge. The resurrection is past, and the local church is not important. That's huge. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, what's that verse? You quote it all the time. I think, Pastor First, to him be glory in the church, world without end.
Ephesians chapter 3, I think it is, world without end. There is no end to the church age.
Right.
The end of Ephesians chapter 3. Unto him be glory in the church through Christ Jesus, world without end. So if these people have stopped practicing local church because no church is good on earth anymore, that's a real red flag. That's like Harold Camping type stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, and again, people, please don't get mad at them laughing at that. The first time anybody hears Jesus and the glorified saints of the North Pole,
I'm sorry.
It's gonna that's gonna happen because we all have thoughts in our head about Santa Claus and the elves and all that kind of stuff.
You could get mad at me. I'm used to it.
Yeah, but I don't know. We're gonna have to end this on a weird note, I guess. But no,
I never heard about it until half an hour ago. I didn't know what this was. So if I'm laughing, it's only because I'm just surprised.
I still like them better than full preterist because to me, full preterist,
it's more exciting.
Yeah, well, good.
It's more entertaining.
Because full preterism, for one, it's like this is the new heaven and new earth. This stinks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely think it's their worst. Because they deny literal resurrection, all that kind of stuff. Where at least we've got something to look forward to with Little Season teaching and all that. But it's again, I'm being the nice guy here. It is everybody. These people all need to understand this is a new teaching to everybody. Most people have not heard this. It's going to shock their system. So if people have reactions to it, I'm being patient with all of you. You'll be patient with us.
Does the new teaching bother them, or do they claim that it was a teaching?
I mean, again, I don't know for sure what they would say on that, but look at what is going on in a majority of churches today. So, I could see not really caring about that because churches,
they assume that all local churches are pro-Zionist, pro-Israel. They assume all local churches are deceived by dispensationalism, and so they're not willing to admit that there are churches out there that are not swallowing the dispensational teaching, especially eschatology. But this is like a pendulum swing to the other direction. This is like I don't understand. But anyway,
Yeah.
If it really has traction, at least I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different churches out there, though. Like there really are. There are so many churches, and I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't stepped foot in hardly any of them.
Well, yeah.
Sure.
We talk to people out soul winning, and you kind of get a feel for what people are believing out there, at least.
Mhm. Well, and that's one of the things I've learned from doing this program too. I've talked to so many different people that there are a lot of different types of eschatology out there. The historicist. Um, I mean, that's another teaching I was not familiar with at all. And a lot of these people have put a great deal of thought and effort and study into these things, and it runs deep. It takes a lot to explore a completely new system that's out there like that. And so what I think all of us naturally do, and I know for sure what I do, is when I listen to other people talk about their eschatology, whether it be a preterist, historicist, little seasoned person, whoever it is, I like to see if it helps fill any blanks for me in areas where I feel like our side is either weak or doesn't have any answers. And and most of the time when I listen to other persuasions, either they don't have answers for that either, but sometimes I find out they have good answers for things that I hadn't even thought of,
Yeah.
that actually corrects things in my doctrine or even strengthens some
Yeah.
things, because they've been looking at it from a completely different angle.
Sure.
And so as a result, they've explored all of Ezekiel, and they could tell you all about Ezekiel 22, where our side, we haven't really got to that yet.
Sure.
So it's, that's what I do in this program. I listen.
Sure.
And it's like,
oh yeah, I mean, it's good to have the conversation, because sooner or later we're going to run into someone,
mm-hmm.
and we're going to have a better understanding than we had before tonight.
Yeah. You're going to run into it. It's growing.
I guess for me, it's just, but what about the local church?
Yeah.
Not mine necessarily, but what about the church that Jesus started? It's still on the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I have a problem with pre-trib raptures, because they teach that the church age ends with the rapture. And I have a problem with that too, because what about the church in the 7-year tribulation period? And I'm asking the same question to the little season people. Where did the church go? Yeah. What about the local church concept? Is this an excuse for you not to go to church anywhere? Because I don't, we're not to forsake the assembling of ourselves together.
Right.
So what about the local church?
Brian Sharp, who I've had in the program, who I strongly disagree with on Israel, he does a very good job of teaching, and I learned a lot of things from him. He's got a book on the chronology of the house of God, and he shows how there's always been a people of God. There's always been a place where they worshiped. I mean, he shows like many of these different aspects that are in churches today. We see it throughout the scriptures. We see it before the law. And so the thing is, I don't think the little season crowd would, they would probably agree with a lot of that teaching on that end. So I guess, and I know, and Jason Jack is on here right now, but I guess what I would like to see him address, and maybe he has, and I missed it. I've seen a lot of his stuff on this, but where is the church today? What is the church today?
Yeah, I'm reading
that's important.
I'm reading what's being said, and I'm not 501c3. I'm not using a perversion. I'm not using a perversion of the Bible. If you're trying to say that all churches are corrupt, you sound like Harold Camping. And if you're trying to tell me that your local church is corrupt, then you need to move. You either need to start a good one or move to where there is one, because there are good churches out there. So it just, to me, to decide that you don't live close to a local church, therefore you don't have to go, and you could go to True North or whatever it is instead, that's just a cop-out for obeying the word. I believe that it's more important that I live close to a Bible believing church, then I live close to a good job.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, well, hey, I definitely need to shut this down, but it's been good. I know we've got a lot of people mad at us probably after this, but man,
I only laughed because I never heard it before.
Little season people, don't act like pre-tribbers, okay? Don't act like pre-tribbers. Whenever somebody disagrees with you, you flip out, you lash out, and things like that. Don't act like post-trib. Don't act like Baptist. Just realize you're going to live in a world where people don't always agree with you. And again, this is new stuff to all of us. So it's a shock to the system. You've gotta understand that. And I'm helping you out here just in case you're right. This is what you got to do to win people over. Because let me tell you, pre-tribbers, they run a lot of people off with the foaming at the mouth that they do on these things, not answering questions. And you all know I'm a listener, and I listen, and I learn something from pretty much everybody. I've with all the people I've talked to, I've not had anybody take me away from my post-tribulational, non-dispensational, premillennial stance. But the more I'm challenged, the more I strengthen certain things. And I will say, in certain aspects of my eschatology, I'm not as dogmatic. I will say that there are certain areas where I'm not as dogmatic, and I have a lot more grace. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons I have some grace for even the Satan's little season people is because I think in the futurist world, there are areas where we have failed to give good, coherent explanations for a lot of passages that they bring up, like this generation shall not pass, things must shortly come to pass, and a lot of those things. I think I have answers for those things, but I'm hearing a lot of people out there either ignoring it or giving terrible explanations. And it's like, well, you know what? If that's going to be your answer to something like that, you can't be surprised when they start listening to the preterists, who at least what they're saying maybe has some consistency to it. So, but yeah, it's I guess that's what I have to say about it. But you guys have any final words?
No, I just want to say, nice to talk to you, Pastor Berzins. I don't think I've ever talked to you before. Appreciate your ministry, and appreciate what you've had to go through in the last 6 months. And glad to see you on this side of everything.
Thanks.
Keep going.
Yeah, I think there were 8.
Anyone needs again, I'll plug it again.
What's that?
I said I'll plug it again. Memorial Day weekend. Anyone that wants to join us out soul winning, we'd love to have you. We're setting people up in hotels on Friday night, so make sure you register. And we're providing food, and it's going to be a blast. You get to meet, and even if you've never given the gospel before, especially if you've never given the gospel before, come on out. We have plenty of people that are able to take you along with us, and kind of show you how we lead people to Christ through the scriptures.
That's Savannah, Georgia.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, that's going to be exciting. So, well, awesome. Well, yeah, I think we had I think there was 8 pastors total on here tonight. I invited, I think 24. So there's a lot of us out there. I think I invited 24 different people. It was all kind of last minute. So I appreciate everyone who came on the program today. I appreciate everyone who watched. I hope you enjoyed this. I know I enjoyed it, even though we got challenged from the live chat a little bit. I wasn't supposed to get challenged tonight. This was supposed to be my safe space, and y'all messed it up. And
I learned something.
Yeah, but at least the people on the program were all agreeing with me. But yeah, so we tried. But
I didn't even see there was a chat until you just brought it up like minutes ago. So.
Oh yeah, no, the chat they completely invaded my safe space tonight and my echo chamber, and so yeah, but that's okay. That's okay. I'm sure it made it more enjoyable for everyone watching. and we do like to teach, inform, but we also don't mind to do a little bit of entertaining at the same time. So, but yeah, so Jason Jack, it's all good, brother Tommy. I appreciate him. He's got a great attitude. I like him, and I will not hold you responsible for all of your followers if you will do the same with me. And so, anyway, thank you all for watching this, and we will sign off now. We'll see y'all next time. God bless.
Thank you.